Good evening, everyone. It is 7 o'clock. I'd like to call our meeting to order for our last budget workshop before we decide to adopt whatever budget we're going to do next Wednesday. So before we continue on with the budget deliberations, I want to recap what we did last night and just where we are up until now. Selectmen, I have passed you 3 sheets. I have given you one with the updated proposed mill rate calculation to replace the one we had yesterday. Yesterday, we were at 1.49 as a potential mill rate because of the change that we made with the local option with the car tax, it is now shifted to what you have in front of you. What that shift is for those that are watching, it has gone from 1.49 as a mill rate increase overall to 1.17. So a significant decrease because of that change. I also have given you another sheet that has the changes that we made yesterday. So there were several changes totaling about $39,795. You should have the page number, the account that it was done in, and the total amount. You, if you get a chance, why don't you put in the changes in your budget book now, so that way you'll have that, should that come up again for discussion tonight. Should only be several in there, but if there's anything missing or something that you see, please let me know. And then lastly, you'll see someone had a question about the probate court costs. I think we had it at $18,000. Again, that's one of those numbers that's given to us as to what our share is for a group of other towns that share this service. So the actual cost was $17,985. I think we put in $18,000. I think we're safe. So we got a couple dollars there as a cushion. So those are the 3 sheets that you have. Update your books accordingly. Let me go over the numbers that we did up until now, just to give everyone an idea of where we're at before we start tonight. So with the changes yesterday, with going through all of the budget lines, except for revisiting capital expenses, we changed the total mill rate from 1.49 down to 1.17. 0.72 is on the Board of Ed side, 0.44 is on the government side. What does that mean in terms of cost? What does that mean in terms of dollars? Percentage wise, the total budget is 4.6% increase over last year. The year before, last year's budget increase was 4.62. So we're effectively equal or stable to what the price increase was last year. The differential between government and education, we were at government side was at 3.89 last year. Board of Ed was at 5.08. So they've come down, we've gone up, but our numbers now are 4.0% for general government, 4.97 for Board of Ed. Again, overall 4.6% for combined budgets. So that's where we're at right now. I thought it was a good discussion last night. We chewed through a lot of the items. We had some great questions that were asked. I felt that the department heads were able to answer the questions. I know there's some still other questions that I was asked earlier today. And if we need those, let's bring the people up if you have questions on that. But if the board concurs, I'd like to tackle the capital items first right now. Is everyone good with that?
Yeah, I'm just updating your updates.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Take your time. Let's get it right.
I'm waiting for the final.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm good.
All right. Everyone set? Yep. All right, very good. All right, capital improvements is where we left last. What questions do we have for this budget? And let me preface that with also all the numbers that we have here. Tom and I have gone through in terms of what the departments have requested, what the actual needs were. I feel very comfortable with the numbers that we have here and what the actual projects are based on the needs of the department, the cost associated with it, but also the minimums needed to maintain the services that we have. So there's no number on here that I feel is extra or something that I don't think should be in there, but let's discuss it now and let's make sure we get it clarified, because I know there's some other points of view and I want to make sure that we're all in agreement on what we want to do going forward. So let's got the first question.
I'm just going to say, I think as a board, we should kind of figure out the Board of Ed system-wide HVAC indoor air quality upgrades. 100, are we sticking with 105 or are we increasing that? Because then I think we can kind of balance the budget out with what that number is. If we're sticking it with 105, so be it. If we're gonna increase it, then we may have to cut from other places. So I'm asking the board what a good number is for that. We were told I said yesterday, for a couple of years now, that debt was gonna come off and go into capital, which was around 450. Now I understand that might be a lot of money and we can't do that. We should pick a reasonable number that we feel is comfortable with the town. So I'll throw out a number. I'll throw out 300,000 to put in there, but you guys discuss it.
Yeah, if I understood him, and kind of correct me if I misheard that, but I think that the 450 did go into capital. I think the issue was that the way it went in, it was about 150 got allocated to Board of Ed capital priorities, and then other monies to town, right? So when we're talking about, if we're looking at doing it, it's not necessarily about adding another 300,000 into capital. I think it would be what, shifting within capital? Is that what we're talking?
Correct.
Okay.
Moving it from the government side to the Board
From
of
the
Ed
town
side.
side to the Board of Ed side.
Correct.
Gotcha.
And that was just the starting point. I mean, I don't know how you guys feel about that number, what you think Bob would need to get going on some of these projects.
Well, as luck would have it, we have Bob here.
Yes, I was gonna say, let's talk to Bob.
Let's talk to Bob.
Mike, are you talking about that 105,000 on
Yeah.
page 135?
Yeah, so what I'm asking is, do we add almost another 200,000 to that?
Do we have to, or is it needed?
Is it, I think if it's needed, what
You're
we
asking
would
if
do with
it's
it if we
needed?
added it?
We're asking if we move it over to him, if we give him 200,000, is it needed for him to get the
to
repairs done?
start doing capital projects at the high school, middle school. Because we've been talking about it for a couple of years and we haven't funded anything in a very long time. I don't even know how
So
long.
you're questioning the 105 is not enough?
Yes,
Yes.
Okay, I just.
And it wouldn't necessarily be for HVAC, but it could be for other things,
whatever,
whatever it be.
because the longer we put them off, the more expensive they get year after year.
Bob, did you bring a wish list?
Yeah, I mean, I got some figures that I can share, you know, specific. So if we use the figure that Mike offered, just as a placeholder. Based on current costs, if I was to tack the rooftop units, which is a pretty critical capital improvement for the school, because we'll be adding dehumidification to those rooftops, which will definitely improve our air quality in the schools. And with that said, updating our controls to be able to manage those rooftops better and most likely get some energy efficiency out of those as well. Our rooftops range from 20-ton all the way down to 4-ton. And all the tonnages are different prices, which includes your equipment, your subcontractor work to put them in, the labor. And so if I was to work off of 300,000, I would be able to get probably 8 rooftops replaced.
And how many do you need?
17, I believe we have. That's a pretty good chunk of rooftops. So, you know, they break up. So basically that would consist of, if I was to take that, that would consist of doing my 3 6-ton and 4 4-ton. So that's about $300,000. There's 7 units. That's a pretty good chunk. So I think that would be one of my top priorities, and that would go, you know, with some controls and updates. And then I do have some capital money that can add to that. So that would be a pretty good benefit and a good start for me. So based on that, you can kind of taper down, which would be less rooftops.
So that would mean basically, Bob, if we, for example, added 195,000, right, to get you a total of 3, or 300 on top of the 105.
Either way you want to do it. 300 would get me that. So you'd have to look at my total line item.
Okay.
You know, to get to 300, add on to the 105 to get to 300 would do the trick. It's not an additional 3.
Okay.
I have a little bit in capital now that I can feed off of, but not much.
Okay.
About 50,000. So that gives me a little bit of a cushion to add some controls, but you know, you could break it up. Your 20-ton rooftop units are coming in at about, you know, installed at about 80 each. You know, I have 5 of those. I have 5 10-ton units. They're coming in at about 53. You know, and these are contingency numbers. There's a little bit of movement in those numbers because they're budgetary numbers. So hopefully we can do better with those. So it
Are
just
you-
gives you an idea on that. Big numbers for
Are you
HVAC.
replacing the units?
Yeah, complete replacement.
Is that with state reimbursement too, or no?
Yeah, no, Mike, I didn't, there's nothing in there, so I would have to see if we can get some money back on that, depending on the program and if it changes. You know, they change all the time, and then you have to meet certain criteria. So for these particular units, they would probably meet a certain portion, but you gotta check all the boxes. So updating the controls, I think, would help tremendously as far as meeting that, but I'd have to reach out. A lot of those HVAC, well, the grant that we first went for is no longer available. It's still out there pending. Hopefully it comes back. And if it does come back, in the meantime, while doing this, then we certainly can get some pretty good reimbursement on that. That was a big number of reimbursement,
How old are these units?
20.
Oh, they're the originals?
Yeah.
Okay,
We've replaced one.
so they're kind
I think they
of,
call that borrowed time, right?
Yeah, we're getting there. So we're replacing an awful lot of parts on units that really are we're gonna start losing, you know, their coils and things like that, where you get to a point where they need to be replaced. So that we can. Yeah, so like I said, these units will have dehumidification in them. I don't have dehumidification in the school, and if I was to add that to the existing chiller system, I'd have to close the school and repipe the whole place, which is not gonna happen. So unfortunately, that wasn't done in the beginning. We have just I have to basically shut from heat to AC. There's no in between, so that magic number on the calendar always fails because somebody's warmer or hotter or whatever. So there's a month of aggravation because I either did it too early or too late. But we can't do both. We have to shut valves down and then start sending cold water through the same pipes that in the wintertime use heat. Right, so that to update that system would be really costly to add pipes.
is that
together.
is that a glycol system?
Yeah, it is.
Now, are you gonna upgrade and continue to use glycol?
So that
Oh.
system stays in place because that's only a certain percentage of the school. Rooftops are the other areas. So we do both. We have unit heaters and chillers in classrooms and things. And then we have rooftops that primarily do a lot of the open space, which is the hallways, the media center, the gymnasiums, the cafeteria areas. So the entire complex is not run with rooftops. This is just a percentage of the atmosphere.
So do the rooftops use Freon?
They would.
They would,
Okay,
absolutely. Thank
so
you.
you know, like, I'm sure you're aware, is the gas is change, the government's changing the gas.
It'll be the new ones.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. We're still using, we still have old stuff, which.
Yeah.
When can't you get
Well,
that?
if you still have R22, you're paying a lot if you have a
We're
gas
paying a
leak.
ton of money to recharge our systems when we have to do that. And we're starting to get, leaks.
Yeah, so with these new rooftop units, you wouldn't need chill water coils in them. They would come with hot gas bypass, which essentially reheats the cold air.
Yeah.
So it pulls the humidity out of it, so you'd get, it's called a hot gas bypass, so. You wouldn't have to go to a 4-pipe system or change it from hot to cold water. If you don't want to.
And that helps, I think, address the air quality issues in the
It
school.
starts to address the air quality issues. It does. There's a lot of air quality
Doesn't get you all the way there.
standards, which I hope they change, but it does start the process of starting to eliminate, some of the potential mold issues and things like that are caused by, dehumidification. We dehumidify the school all summer with 14 commercial units that sit and run all day long to keep the humidity out of the school. I've done some with recommendations. I've done some damper controls and shut some dampering and things down, especially during the summer months when the students aren't there, to prevent that from coming in. And we've had great success by doing that. There's no reason why we should be pulling moisture into our system when we're trying to chill it. So we've done some of that, but you have to be careful on your percentages because you do want fresh air intake to a certain point. So unfortunately, some of that's still coming in, and it's coming in the form of moisture into that space with no way to remove it. This will help. So that's what that would be.
Okay, all right,
Thanks.
okay, thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks, Dennis.
All right, so another $195,000 into that category, gets him up to 300. I get Bob what he thinks he needs on his wish list to get that first big step done.
It's my suggestion. How do you guys feel?
I think we have to start doing something. We can't keep waiting and waiting. That's all we've been doing for years.
We got a big nut to crack coming up with the schools. And anything we can do to deal with the costs now is less that we're gonna have to hammer the taxpayers with when that school bill hits, whatever it happens to be.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just be aware also, every about $200,000 is about a quarter mil, maybe a little bit more and stuff, so.
Well, let me ask you a question, Mike, and I know this is, we're always trying to be very careful with this, but one of the things I don't recall seeing yet was, for example, the audit from last year. I know we're moving $300,000 in from the fund balance. But what did the audit say in terms of how we finished last year, what position we were in? How much was, I assume we ran a surplus if we were moving 300,000 in from fund balance on these taxes. Do we know what that surplus was and how much of that has been encumbered for other items? In other words, maybe we go from 300,000 to 400,000 and we try to find another 100,000 in savings elsewhere. So that we can still try to hit other priorities that we need to help, but we basically, in effect, spending a little bit more capital without taxing into incremental dollars.
Right. I do not have that number.
Because I think the audit's complete. I just don't think we've had, I know we normally have that review. I just don't think we've had.
We have not yet. It has not been ready to submit to you.
Okay.
So,
Well, we were gonna be in a really great surplus after this year's budget, but unfortunately the boilers broke down, so we took all that, the permitting money
Yeah.
that we overage, and we gave it to the Board of Ed. So like, we would have been in a real good
Yeah.
spot next year.
Yes, it would.
I don't know where we're at this year, though.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm saying. I'm kind of curious, how we're running, what our projected surplus will be this year. Because even if that helps us fund a couple of priorities a little bit earlier in this year's budget, right? So we don't have to do them in next year. But also, what was the actual surplus last year? And is there any ability for us to use maybe a little bit more fund balance and then also look at adjusting some of these priorities?
That was-
I think if we can get to the 300,000 and Bob's got a little bit more capital to use, that gets you almost 50% of the way with the rooftops. That's
Good
a
start.
pretty good goal for us to set, to get
Mhm.
done.
I was in the same mindset, like, I don't know what that number is, what we have for a surplus. But if we had, for instance, if we had cut something out of capital now, when we find out what that number is, we'll just take from that number and buy whatever it is that we were gonna buy. We cut it now, but we pay for it in July or whatever, whenever we find out what the surplus was.
Yeah, we've done that before, where we'll find out what the surplus was, and then we'll fund some of the capital things. I think, right, I know you and I were on a board where we did that a couple of times, where we looked at what the surplus was, and then there were a couple of capital items that we weren't able to fund at the beginning of the year, that because the way the budget was managed, we had a large enough surplus, we were then able to fund it and allocate, to do that.
again, and this
That's what I'm kind of looking at this year, right? We've got a lot of stuff we want to do and some real needs. Trying to figure out how we balance
yeah,
that.
and it's assuming a surplus also, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that's what I'm saying,
agree.
but that's why it would be nice to have that, if we can kind of confirm where we're at.
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm with you. I remember those years that we were able to do a lot of capital, like we had 600,000 surplus or
Yeah.
400,000. I
That's
remember those years.
That's exactly the,
And
what
we've
I'm
always
thinking of.
been in a surplus. We just never really hear about it as much as we did those years. So
Yeah.
I gotta imagine, I know Tom's great and he does well with the book, so I'm sure we're in a good spot.
Well, I think that's the thing, right? Most of the time, the way we are able to, the way the money is managed, we typically, even when it's allocated, we're efficient with it. And so we usually can return some to the fund balance and then we use it to offset the next year. Question is, do we have a little bit more than the 300,000 that we currently used to try to offset new taxation?
Oh, yeah.
Agreed. Why don't we, if there's anything else on this list that anyone has a concern about?
Well, in order to keep it balanced without adding to the mill rate,
Right.
I wanna move stuff from this list up to capital. So, for instance, if we do the numbers and we took the phones out of it, the 90K for phones. if we take the one police car out of it and the school van and move it over there, that's 202K.
Right.
And that gets us where we need to be,
That puts at 307.
307.
But the question is more important, is there a need for that right now? Can we pull it out of the budget? I don't think we can. Because we don't know what surplus is. We don't know what that is. I'm concerned about that. I wouldn't want to pull out one of the cars.
Well,
If it's needed, or if it's something that required based on what the police department needs, or in the case of the phone system, if there's a need there, that's something that we need to have.
Well, they can bond it when they do the school bonding. They can put that in there.
You're assuming they can, but there may be more urgency to that. We may need that right now. And the bonding, how long do you think the process will take? I mean, there's a lot of back and forth on the school system. Is it going to be this year? Is it going to be something that gets done? There's a lot of unknowns there.
Well, I
That's
think,
what I'm worried about,
for example, with the phone system, right, you're talking about, I'm sure it's an old PBX or
I
something.
understand what you're saying. I'm just concerned about.
Or it still works.
Yeah, we'd have to
Yeah,
look
it
and
could work
see
for
what,
another year.
because I can tell you one of the things that we run into a lot of times is things hit end of life. And then you look at it and say, can you get parts to repair them on the secondary market? And then when those start to dry up, and I'm just not sure what vintage we're at and whether or not we're at a point where we're gonna have a hard time getting, parts on the secondary, and you could be in an emergency situation. So we probably should ask that when we're looking at, see exactly what we have with the phone system, but,
Right.
Well, if it
but
becomes.
I'm
an
not,
emergency-
but I'm not about, and like, for example, right, we're looking at, and obviously, to me, we should be doing sidewalks, where are we looking at doing those 75 in sidewalks? Is that a place that we could do part of them, or maybe do, that
Well,
type of
then
thing?
we
Yeah.
just approved 100,000 for sidewalks.
Which is with the grant match, that's gonna do that, and then this is non-grant, so this is incremental. But this is probably one of those niche areas that doesn't qualify for a grant, that, we're leaving some residents hanging by not doing it. But it's,
So,
we should probably talk, to me, we have to look at the priorities of what we got in.
so I think we need to clarify each one of these, because, for example, the 75,000 on there.
Yeah.
In any sidewalk project we have, there is the grant money that pays for most, if not all of the
Okay.
actual work. But there's other money that's there, non-grant.
The match.
that will either match or has to go into engineering and whatnot. So
Okay,
the 100,000 before and the 75,000 now are in that category. Now, I have our, I have Ryan Halpern here to kind of explain some of the differences should we need it, but that fund is put aside to be able to facilitate those sidewalk projects.
so that 75 is actually to support one of the projects we just
Yes.
allocated.
it
Okay.
is.
Oh, that's what I was, so is
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, no, that was the
actually
question. I didn't know if it was
It's-
incremental
Or
funding,
it's anticipatory.
or if we had already encumbered that money, and
Of a
this was to do
project.
some more stuff next year.
So we've had ongoing projects for sidewalks. We have a connectivity grant right now that we've applied for that requires having funding available. And the connectivity grant, and Ryan, to make sure if I'm explaining it incorrectly, I want you to correct. We need money to either match for that so we can handle the engineering, some of the design for that. So that funds the 75 grand.
But we've already funded that.
There you go.
Yeah, if you could answer that.
no problem.
Because,
You look like you want to talk.
yeah,
He was, he was
crunching the
spraying.
numbers, so,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little complicated. There's a few different sidewalk projects. There's the Main Street one that we finished this past year. There's still, so we have, I'll start here. I'll start from the top with how much we have right now, which is 55,000, approximately 55,000 in capital non-grant. Then we have 50,000 in low SIP funds from last year that we allocated. Then we have $612,000 connectivity grant. And that one is to complete Main Street, phase 3. So altogether, over 700,000. Now, some of this money in the 55,000 is being spent as we speak. The Highland design was approved at the end of last year to design Highland and Homestead. Main Street connectivity change order or adder to that project for the east side of Main Street from Walgreens coming up to the Buck Foreman area. We're hoping the bids come in favorable to finish the sidewalks there, since they did such a good job, budget wise. We were able to get north of Gildersleeve School with the sidewalks last year. Now there's only 2,000 feet of sidewalks to complete, so we might be have like $400,000 to come down here and do a lot of the sidewalks and curbs down here that are all falling apart around these islands and coming up to the building from Walgreens around Freestone and everything. So that's what we're hoping to do. But that design, the inspection, everything is going to cost money. So we have, after subtracting what we already have, that's dedicated to design, we have about 690,000. Then the estimate for that we want to use on Main Street is the 612, so that wipes that out. Highland could be around 100,000. That's an estimate. Homestead, 40,000. And then Jacobson for the construction administration and inspection, another 30,000, which is a total of 782 out, which leaves us 92K short. Now I know there's the other 100,000 that we just got. So that puts us tight on getting those projects completed this year. There is now a third project that we want to apply for High Street to continue the sidewalk replacement going from Crimson Heights through the high school. And that application is due in May. So there's work that we have Jacobson starting to do the concept plan and the estimate on that, which is going to be between $5,000 and $10,000. And then if we get that grant later this year, the final design, bid, inspection, everything that goes with it, using the Main Street steep grant that we just did, the design, everything right through construction was about 70,000. So that would be the 75,000. And that leaves us a little contingency. And again, these are estimated numbers, but that pretty much takes up all the funding for those three projects to get done. So that would be Highland, Homestead, Main Street to the end on that side, Main Street on the east side, possibly up through Waverly in this area. And then High Street if we got that grant.
So it's not really a want, it's a need if we want to go after more grants and be able to get those grants and have it funded.
Correct. Yeah.
And if we did, in looking at trying to do something with the school, use that 75, we'd still be able to do the other two projects that we talked about. The only part that we wouldn't be able to do this year, that we'd all have to plan for maybe for the following year, would be High Street.
Correct.
Okay.
And that's if we get that grant. We don't know if we're going to get it or not.
Okay.
The application goes in May. We should find out by the end of the fiscal year, start of the next year,
and
which
if we
would line up nicely if we had it in the budget.
If we had it in the budget here, it would line up. But let me ask you a question. If we didn't have it in the budget here and we got the grant, would the timeline for completion of work in the grant allow us to fund it in the 26, 27 fiscal year?
26. So yeah, we would have to spend the funding up front and get the design done.
And the design is the 75.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I'm getting you now. I thought it was the work.
Yeah. Yeah, the grant only covers the construction and then some of the material testing that goes with it, but we usually just fund that out of that. It's easier just to separate it, construction, engineering. We cover the engineering, the grant covers the construction.
Okay.
So we use the full grant amount for as much sidewalk as possible.
And how much are you going for on the,
So
for
you
the
can
High,
apply
for the High
between,
Street one?
you can apply between, I think, 3 and 800,000. Don't quote me on that, but that's roughly what you could apply for. So we need an estimate from Jacobson just to get through the high school from Crimson. We'll see what that estimate is, work in some contingency there. and we'll apply for that amount. That's why it was 612,000 that we got for this one. They were assuming we were gonna end at, I think it was like 510 Main Street, and we ended up at 580. So that's the difference in funding that we're gonna see for the possible change order down here. So it's all just based on estimates. We don't know how the bids are gonna come in until they come in, but, you know. That's that.
What was when you were rattling off, Homestead 100,000?
Yeah.
Highland 100,000, Homestead 40, Main Street 612. Then you
Yeah.
said 30,000 for something.
So that would be construction, administration, and inspection for Jacobson. So
Oh.
the other numbers I was naming, that was just for the design of Highland and the Main Street, concept plan over here for the connectivity project. So we would still need to administer the project, get it out to bid, and then have the inspection, the material testing, everything like that for both projects. So that was the 30 estimated.
Okay.
So,
Thanks, Ryan.
so this is a kind of, Ryan and I have been working on a bunch of projects here, this year. And I don't really have this stuff off the top of my head, but I didn't have the surplus. I didn't expect to use the additional any surplus due to the fact of all the supplemental appropriations that you've all approved this year, or the one that we have ahead of us. You approved a $780,000 use of fund balance for the well.
Yeah.
You use $200,000 of fund balance for the road construction on High Street as the match. And you have another 150 in this resolution to do the sidewalk and the resolution of fund balance. We've utilized 300,000 as a reasonable usage of fund balance in our budgeting system. We've used that, gone through many audits with that as our premise of usage of fund balance. And it's a reasonable number that you utilize. It's not over aggressive of a use of fund balance in your budgeting. And then it does give you the ability, when things do arise, to go back and perform supplemental appropriations as needed, as things become either more urgent or required. So I just wanted to refresh you guys on those are all the things we've already taken from the current through supplemental appropriations for this year. So that's using up quite a bit of any surplus that we would have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
And thank you, Ryan, for walking through that, because I know it's different projects.
Yeah,
in
no
motion. There's
problem.
a lot of things in the air.
Yep. Anything else on that? All right. All right, thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
I think one of the things to consider too is I'd like to get Bob what he needs to get that project done. And I think our decision is, do we find it on the list here of items that were deemed necessary and important for the various departments? Or do we increase the taxes or increase the revenue that we generate from the town in order to pay for some of that, or maybe some hybrid of that? So I think that's something maybe we need to think about. But is there any other item? I know, Michael, you mentioned the police cars. Is that something?
I'd like to know why, we have to have two this year, why we can't say do one this year and one next year.
Yeah.
Ideal for, I guess, the board. Good evening.
Scott Cunningham, Portland Police Department. Regarding cars. It's been a few years since we've had cars.
It's been what?
A few years since we've had any cars. I think our newest car is a 2021 right now. And with the addition of the 13th officer, we won't have spares that are going to be sitting and not accumulating miles anymore. On average, every year, they're going to put on 25,000 miles per vehicle. Now, over the past year and a half, I've kind of been able to shuffle around cars to try to keep some of the high mileage off our top ends, but they're all reaching a point where they're getting very close, a great number of them, to 100,000. And that's not including our two spares, which are Taurus
Torres are basically unusable by our department at this point. And that's because the equipment now that we have to house, we can't get into the trunk, or if it's in the trunk, our officers can't access it fast enough. Because we have to be ready to take our equipment out immediately. We're responding to calls. We prepare as best we can, but we don't always know the nature. And whatever tool we need to access immediately. That being said, we probably have, I don't know the exact mileage on the spares. With our SUVs, 90, 100. It's got to be in the 90s. 80s, and then probably two or three in the 80s. Now let's roll that for 2 years, add 50,000 on that. Good luck with that car. As it is now, we have a 15 spare K9 car down there that the highway garage has been asking us to get rid of for a couple of years. It's just difficult and it's expensive to maintain because of its age. The lighting systems in the cars are starting to go, especially the older ones. We have one car we call Blinky because half the lights don't work on it, and it's going to cost $3,000 to have it rewired with new lights. The old lights are not, can't transfer them. I mean, once you put new wiring in, you have to put new lights in. It's unfortunate the way it balances out, but as our numbers increase, these other needs are always going to increase. And that's just the way life is. If we're gonna cut anything, I'll cut the cameras. Because you know what? We have to respond, and we have to respond safely. Cameras are a great investigative tool. Love to have them, but I consider them a luxury over a car. We have to have cars. And we're gonna come back again next year. We're gonna need cars again. I'm telling you right now. Cannot get away from purchasing cars. We did it for too long. And
What do you expect to get for mileage out of the cars? Like, is the 100,000 kind of
we
your
try to
threshold?
get up to 125. So you figure you got at least 6 months before we're in a new car, 6 to 8 months. There's another 10, 12,000 miles on whatever cars we already have. You wait another year, throw another 25,000, 20 to 25,000 on that. At that point, the cars we usually pass to other departments within the town, they're not looking as sharp, or as they're not running the way they should, and they're not as safe as they probably should be for these other departments to use. It's important to keep a just timely refresh of all these vehicles. That's the only way to do it. Once you start skipping years, and we got lucky because we lost 8 guys. I mean, that's not lucky for us or the town. But we were down to 8 guys, so we didn't have miles on those cars, but that's not the case anymore, as I said.
So are these 2 vehicles you're looking for, are they going to replace the Tauruses?
Yep.
Or-
We'll put those out to pasture. But again, I don't expect to get them until probably October, November. I mean, you're looking at another 10 to 12 on each car that's currently on the road.
When you just said about the cameras, are you
Yep.
talking about the traffic
Yeah,
cameras
yes.
and the security cameras on here, or just the traffic cameras?
traffic.
Isn't that already partially funded?
That is, but we have 12 in this year. I mean, I'd have to pare back what we have through the contractor.
Right.
If I'm gonna lose anything, I'd rather just lose that 12. The other thing is I can't stress this enough, and I'm sure Pete could speak eloquently on it. We can't lose our computers either. No. They're just, our old ones are just, they're old, and they're not gonna be supported anymore. And that's the lifeblood of our department. I know everything's expensive, and I wish I didn't have to be the person presenting all the expensive stuff to you, but it's. I guess
Where do
that's
you-
why I'm here.
Are the cameras in the car, or where are the cameras positioned?
No, these were street cameras.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we already have some?
No,
No.
we have X number of dollars allocated for a system. We in this year's budget, because of the proposal we had, which came in a little higher than anticipated, we had another $12,000 added to meet that proposal that we have now. We'd have to pare down the proposal.
But this is
But I
not
think-
just cameras, it's also an alert system, right?
Yes, it's
So
a mix.
it's
It is a mix. Yes.
Yeah, so if some,
3 of the systems are alert. The other ones are only for video.
Okay.
Because the alert ones cost more money.
right,
And you only need them certain areas, the entry and exits of the town.
But I think that those, given some of the challenges that you guys have been facing, in terms of protecting folks in the town, those are important.
I think we
well,
spoke,
you know what a bad actor.
Yeah, those are important.
we spoke at some of the other meetings about the type of element that has come in for the crimes, the serious crimes, and
Yeah.
we definitely need the readers.
Yep.
So. Any other questions regarding the cars?
No, I mean, the cars make sense, right? It's
Again, it's
because with the way
it's
the
an
fleet is
unnecessary
aging, right?
evil, but that has to happen.
Well, and the problem is if we don't get into a better cycle, then we're gonna be looking at doing 4 at a time, and then that'll really be
Yeah,
impactful.
and that has happened in the past. We've lost a cycle and then all of a sudden we needed bulk number of cars.
Yeah, which by the way is exactly what we're trying to get ourselves out of with the schools.
Correct.
So,
I
case
understand
in point, right?
Thank you. I'll say.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you very much.
Do we want to talk about the BOE van as well, in terms of where that falls in the budget? The BOE van, the Board of Ed van.
Is that in here?
Yeah,
Yeah,
But I-
it's in
but I
there.
think
I'm
that
just
the-
thinking we're looking at ways to recoup the 195,000, right?
but I think the BOE ban ultimately is a saver, right?
Well, I did
In year
to
2.
hear more about what.
Yeah.
Is it, the van doesn't exist presently, so there's a plan for that, and just how firm is that plan, and what does it look like?
So, the Board of Ed van essentially pays for itself, right?
Yeah.
We are either gonna have, the funding, if we purchase the van, we can take the funding out of student transportation that we currently have budgeted in specialized services and pay Ambassador or M&J or any of the other number of vendors that we have to transport the students. Or we can purchase the van, take the money out of that and use it to pay for a van driver, right? So, it's a 1-year payback. It actually saves us about $15,000 out of the operating budget by reallocating it. So it's either we're gonna pay Ambassador, M&J, or another vendor to transport the students, or we're gonna purchase the van and bring it in-house, and hire another driver. Hopefully, we can find another driver. But we've had part of the reason we're in a good budget position, a better budget position this year, is that by purchasing the van and having 2 running now, we're saving by not having to pay the contractors to do that for us. So it pays for itself. I mean, they're gonna pay somebody else and they always mark it up. Right? I mean, there's a markup in any business, or bring it in-house.
One quick question before you go, if the 52 is in here now, I know you just said that operationally that'll save you, said what, about $15,000 a year?
Right.
Is that 15,000 currently in the Board of Ed budget?
Yeah, well, so we would need to reallocate some of that to pay for a driver.
Okay,
And then some back-end support, gas, we would need to move it into some of the other line items that we use to support the van. The driver being the primary one. But that's where it starts to, we could have done that on the board side, but we figured if we did this as a capital expense, it would work in our operating budget. And then at the end of next year, once we have the van, then we can reduce our budget overall. I'm not sure if I explained that quite right.
I'm just trying to figure out as we're trying to find money to do a lot of priorities, including some stuff at the school, if there was a way to.
Yeah, the van is a long-term cost saver.
Mhm.
This year, it's about break even, might save us about 15,000, but
Mhm.
after this year, it will save us about $75,000 a year.
Mhm.
But I know that doesn't help this year, but it's the right investment to make for a short-term $15,000 savings and long-term $75,000 savings.
But-
Once the van is paid for and we have it as part of our fleet.
How long do you anticipate being able to use the van? Like how many years? How many miles do you put on it?
Boy, you know what? I'm gonna defer to some of the experts in terms
Gotta
of van pool driving. I mean, Bob, you might know more, or even Scott.
I'm just wondering, when are we gonna have to buy another one? If that one wears out.
For, yeah. Right.
Vans last 120, 130, you know, for the transportation that we're doing.
Yeah, we're not flooring it to get to an emergency. We're driving.
And how
the
many
speed
years
limit.
do you anticipate?
Like I said, if those routes increase, because we
Yeah.
have more activity, which saves money on the long run, then, you know, you're gonna be replacing the vehicle.
Yeah.
Tires.
It is one of those investment type, you know,
Yeah.
saves us money on the transportation, so.
And we mentioned the phone system earlier. Was,
Yeah.
oh, that's townwide phone. That's not just,
No,
under
it's
that
actually
category,
for
but it's, okay,
For the school.
School.
it's mainly for the school.
So I'll tell you a little bit about the phone system, but before that, you know, great suggestions. Let's move some capital projects ahead so that we don't have to bond them and spend money on interest, mortgaging our future. Great idea. But there's not a single one on this list on the first page of capital that I personally don't consider almost an emergency, because these things have been floundering for years.
Yeah.
Public safety, you're not gonna get any waiver from me. That should be the priority on your entire list, and we should build under that. So here's the thing. I don't think anybody should lose personally to move HVAC ahead of the game. I think it's a great opportunity to save money. But if it's gonna sacrifice stuff that we certainly need, that is really critical, especially, you know, Officer Cunningham talking about vehicles that have 100,000 miles on it and that you're responding in emergency mode with. Yeah, you're just waiting for a disaster on that. So I think most of this stuff is critical. I get what you're trying to do. I think the ask is excellent, but my rooftops are running. They're certainly not dehumidifying. But if that's gonna have to be done in a bond to save what really is not gonna be done in a bond, we might have to look at that. The phones is one of those. It probably hasn't been brought to anybody's attention maybe as strong as I will, but the high school phone system is a single point system. It's run by a controller. And thank you, Pete, for the additional information to put all this together, but maybe it should be you, not me, but we've had problems with the phone system at the secondary school before. Okay, when the phone system's down for an hour, yeah, look out. They'll be in your office, Mike. Every parent that can't get a hold of the school for whatever reason, but it's not even that as much as the ability to call out. We don't have a intercom system in the newer school like we do in the schools without phones in the classroom, but at least we have contact to the main office. So we'll lose that, but we'll lose the ability for the administrators to communicate with our busing system and things that they do every day from their phones. In an emergency, can they use their cell phones? They can. They're their personal vehicle, personal devices. We've done that before, especially on the principal level, the director's level, and stuff like that. But half of our cell phones don't work in that school. So the teachers lose the ability of emergency communication if they don't have the radio system that I put in. So there's a lot there. So we are at a point right now that if we lose the controller that we have, there are no parts for it. And I was just told most recently that a lot of the parts that were saved or given to us by the company that now is out of business have been used. So we don't even have any more of those parts to put in the system. So what happens here is if it fails, it fails. We're out of communication, but we'll be in an emergency mode to repair that, which is going to cost you about probably twice of this, because you're going to have to go with a no bid situation, whatever. You're going to have to emerge within a week or two, try to get communication back to the school, because I can't imagine operating without it. I don't know if you can imagine a school without a phone system.
Can you legally operate without it? Probably not.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to come up with a plan to do so, but boy, that's some scary stuff. I mean, I witnessed it just for a 24-hour period and I just wanted to hide. I mean, it really wasn't my issue, but I did everything I could to support the town because they kind of run the phone system. That's why it's in the category it is. But that's on the list. And here's the thing, you can pull that away, you can fund it somewhere else, but there may be that day where you'll all get the phone calls. Maybe we'll share cell phones for parents, but you'll get those phone calls if that thing goes down. We can definitely bet on it, that it'll last. You can put it in the bond moving forward if we ever get there. But then again, you're purchasing a phone system with interest. I mean, I look at everything as borrowing.
And by the way, Bob, that's kind of what.
It's just
question I
my
had,
business
right?
background of borrowing and how that, Rick, you're in business. It's just hard to swallow. Try to do the best without doing that. And, your capital is what we try to do, but it's painful overall for the budget. I get it. But if I came to you and said 5 of my rooftops didn't work, and I was struggling with my environmental contractors, and we were trying to get even heat into the building, that's a different story. Like the boilers, didn't have a choice but to come to you with that. That was pretty ugly. Still working that out, but this great opportunity to save money, but I think there's other priorities as well that need to be hit. Just want to be an equal player. I'm not afraid to say that. I've been on all sides. It's hard.
Okay, thanks for
Really
the
appreciate
input.
you.
So the flip side, I think, would be, right, if we're looking at $195,000 incremental capital, it'd be, a little less than $0.25 mil, like 0.223 mil, if we wanted to go there,
Okay.
or some
that's the one.
portion there, right?
I didn't follow with you.
No, I was saying, is we're looking at trying to look at doing a little bit more for the school. If we wanted to fund it, right, just fund it. If we don't have the ability to use any incremental fund balance, you're looking at a little less than $0.25 mil, like 0.223.
Well, I'm looking at this budget and listening to everybody and correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but I think you said we have a combined increase of 4.6%.
4.6 for both budgets, 4.60.
And I'm just looking at it from
Yeah.
all the retired people and senior people that don't use town services, that just try to, take care of themselves, and they have to pay these tax increases, and 4% and 5% budget increases year after year are not sustainable for people that are on fixed incomes. So I've been asking a lot of questions and listening, not because I want to chintz on public safety or the schools, but I'm just trying to look at it from the perspective of our older citizens. So I felt, I'll be honest with you, the other fellow selectmen, I felt last night we were just handing out money, a couple thousand here, a couple thousand there, and I'm of the mindset that, we need to do what we absolutely need to do, the important stuff, but some of the things, if a department head comes up and asks for, I don't know, 36,000 or 34,000, we say, oh, we'll give you 38,000. It's like, no, to me, it's like the person came up here and said they could live with 36, then that's what we should give them, or question why maybe we're even giving them that. But we decided it was a good use. This was, I think when we were talking about the van drivers.
With that, because the previous 2 years were $38,000 is what we spent, even though we only budgeted 32.
Okay, well then I missed.
Every year we move money into that to
Okay.
cover our overages.
Oh, I
Okay,
don't think I understood that last night either.
yeah,
That
I didn't
was-
understand that.
Yeah. She said in her write-up that 36,000.
But she did say in her write-up 36,000. I know we're digressing a little, but that's what she asked for. So to me, if that's what a department head's asking for, then if we feel we can do it, we do that. I know it's a small amount, but I just think we,
The previous 2 years were 36,200, 35,500. And this year is budgeted for 32,000. And they're
Right.
already turning people away.
and she asked for 36, I believe. And we gave her 38,
Yeah.
or we said 38.
Well, she originally asked for 34.
True, and then she
And then
came
she
back
came
and
back for
and asked
two
for
more,
30,
36, so.
or two more.
But I think Rick, I certainly can identify with what you're saying in terms of, keeping our increases as low as we can and meeting the critical needs of the town. And I think that's the core of the message. And I think it's, I'm hearing Bob, and I appreciate Bob's comments an awful lot because, I was on long-term capital last year for the first time, just very short termer. And, hearing those folks talk about it, it was just so clear. It brought home so much how, we've gone on the cheap with capital spending in this town for 20 years. And we've not done what we need to do. And unfortunately, we can't make up for that this year. And I think that's the feeling I have is I'd like to see us do more. And I think that's what Mike was getting at too, is we need to do more. And I don't know, but I don't think adding more to the bottom line right now of an already 4.6% increase is, I think that's a heavy lift. That's a heavy lift. Yes.
I mean, the people that are still employed, maybe they're gonna get a 4% raise or 5% raise with the job. But the people that are retired and are on fixed income,
Right.
they're not getting those kind of raises. I mean, they have to pretty much depend on whatever they maybe have saved and can earn with their investments or what they're gonna get from Social Security. And I don't think Social Security went up 5% this year. So
No.
that's just a little bit I'm just trying to say, let's look at it from those people's point of view, which, I think is about 40% of our population.
That's my point, just with this one department, is these are the people in that fixed income that are relying on the town for transportation. Because they can't drive anymore. They have no way of getting there. If you want to
Okay.
change something else, I think this is the biggest thing we have to offer senior citizens in the town besides the senior center. And most of these people, like Sarah said, can't even get to the senior center unless we pick them up and bring them.
Yeah, I think.
That was my thing. If she was asking for 36, but she would like not just to be people to be picked up to go to an appointment, that they'd be picked up and brought to the senior center for events, for socializing, for meals. That's why I was happier with the 38.
And Bob, I agree with that. I think that there's an awful lot when we talk about constituencies. Our seniors are folks that don't use as many of the other services. And adding a little bit into that to improve the quality of their life, I think is important. I think it was important that we added, I think there were really 3 places that we kind of made some of those adjustments. And, the fire department, I think that was, I was happy that we were able to do that. I think that was a good place to add a little bit. I was happy to do it with the seniors. And I think when you look at the net, with the additional purchase we did for waste, the transfer station, that ended up being a net negative because we ended up taking some money out of the bags. Right. So I think we found some offsets. I think that when we talk about the discussions we had last night, for all of the different discussions in different categories, it moved the mill increase from a 1.12 to a 1.17. If I, confirming on with Tom's numbers. So you're talking about, it was 5/100ths. So it's a lot of conversation. It wasn't a huge amount of dollars. And I look at what we're gaining and what we're able to impact that can have on those folks it's probably good value. I think the fact that we're having this discussion now about the capital budget, unless we want to go back and look at other budget items, period, which I know a lot of that is really contractual costs, right? We've kind of already made certain commitments. That's the hard part, right? We want to do more capital, or there's capital, and it doesn't seem like there's a lot of good ways to do that right now. without driving it up. That's always, and that's what we've always been up against, you know, it's how do you add another $250,000, right? I mean, we looked at some potential options, but trying to find offsets. And those seem very difficult given sort of like the set of priorities. And if we don't want to spend incrementally more, which I agree with, I think we're sitting at 4.6. Overall, you know, to me, I really would prefer not to go higher. I wish we could be lower. But I think it's good that we have, it's good that we have the
I
discussion.
just was
Yeah.
giving some, small examples. I don't care,
Yeah.
one way, it's not that big a deal. It's just an example. But the real point was, like you said, it's a 4.6% increase. I'm not real comfortable with that, but I mean, if that's where it's gotta be, I'm only one person here, so.
Yeah.
No, but
but
we all need to understand the other side. So I agree with both of you, like, I understand that. But I agree with you a little bit more on this, because there's some things in here that, for $2,000 and $4,000 more, I think the impact on that it makes a big difference. I feel good about that, and it does give back to the seniors, especially the ones that need it. That's an easy yes for me. But we have other places. So for example, Bobby had suggested that with the lease that we had, we put another $16,000 in open space, right? To me, if I would rather pull from that to pay for the $2,000 there, and maybe put more money in open space at another time or at a future budget. So I would rather do something else to get to the number that's less, because every dollar we talk about on the positive side is going to be, taxes out there. In fact, even if we do $200,000 to the Board of Education, we add $200,000 to their side from us, the mill rate goes from 1.17 to 1.40. There's that big of an impact. The percentage overall for increase goes from 4.6 to 5.1. Now we're over 5% just with that 200,000. Board of Ed 4.99, general government 5.3. So those are big numbers. So every dollar makes a difference, I guess is what I'm saying. And after looking at the capital budget, those are all numbers that kind of were pounded down to as low as they can. And who knows, we could go through a whole year and the phone system could work great, right? You always rolling the dice. So we're making calculations here and decisions based on being careful. Maybe we can go another year. I mean, we all do that in our own homes, right? We go as long as we can with the car and other stuff. But I'm sensitive to the amount that it is. And a good percentage of that amount is for providing the services that we do as a town, and reasons for people wanting to come and stay in town. So again, it's a holistic thing, and it's obviously complicated, but where else does this board feel like we can either find some money? Like I said, I think that $16,000 extra in open space is something that I consider, and put it back to 50. That drops to $16,000 down.
I agree with you. I think we. I don't know if Bobby and Mike have any other ideas about the capital, but I think it's kind of hard to cut. I mean, those are from what I've heard so far that those are needs, not necessarily just wants.
Yeah, I think I would classify every one of these as a need. But if anyone has a question about it, I mean, I want everyone to feel comfortable about that.
We had 52 and 58 there.
Well, I can tell you, I'm not comfortable going up to 5.1.
No, not at all.
And I think,
I agree.
and I just hear what Bob is saying. I'd like to see those units. You can get a leg up on those, but.
I think the other compliment.
Well, when we've done with capital, I'd like to revisit another thing from last night.
So
But I don't find it here.
So let me ask the board, does anyone have any other questions about the capital expenses here?
No.
Because once we leave this, we're leaving it for good and we'll move on. So next week we have to vote on this, so I'd like to get it, at least the decision tonight. Going once, twice. All right. All right. And let's look at, if anyone has any additional questions on what we've covered already.
I have a question on the library position. I'd like to hear more, hear that. Trying to find my page on it.
Yeah, I'd be interested in the number.
Yeah.
Hey, Ken, what page is the library?
Yeah, please.
Of what that actual.
99.
99. I was
way off. I would have been flipping for a while here.
It is
Oh,
easy
no,
for
no,
me
it's-
to remember, though. Hi, Jen Billingsley, Library Director.
So how much is the dollar amount on that position we're looking to fill?
If you're looking at how much I could pull off of that, because I had some staffing contractual things that happened after the budget was submitted.
Okay,
The number that we could pull off of that, if you absolutely didn't think you could, would be 18. I really do strongly encourage, if you have questions that I can answer for that, I'm happy to do so. We really do need I'm gonna borrow a phrasing that I heard last night. It's not a new position, it's restoring a position.
okay.
So it's, because I talked back when the budget was reviewed, we used to be 7 full-time and we used to be 6 full-time and 9 part-time staff. So I'm asking for 15 hours back out of 48.5 that we used to have in 2005. That was 48.5 hours extra, like in addition per week. And so I'm asking for 15 of those hours back. I know that you do look at it year to year and see what the increase and the decrease is. We had a 0.65% decrease in our budget last year over what it was. It was a 0.94 increase in fiscal year 22. It was a 0.76 decrease in fiscal year 18. So you've been trimming your library budget from what I can tell, because I only can see the end pieces of it, and ask Jan what her memory is for some of it. And she still takes my phone calls, and I'm very grateful. But
What was the decrease last year?
0.65%.
0.6.
So
What's your staffing?
And that's
now?
not on the numbers, though.
we have 7 full-time, 4 part-time. What was the, I'm sorry, what was the other question?
I'm just looking at the numbers, 15, 20.
That's total
24.
decrease for the entire budget, not just the staffing
Oh,
number.
okay.
I looked at.
And how many, excuse me, how many hours a week are you open?
Ooh, I can pull that actually.
Is like, I tried to add them up. I think I was at 52.
Yeah, that sounds pretty right. I don't have access to all of
Okay.
we're encouraged not to
Well,
say
are you-
to our device.
You're
It should.
10 to 8, Monday through Thursday?
Yes, and then
And then
10 to
5 on Friday,
And
and
then
what's Saturday?
10 to 3.
Okay.
I guess it used to.
It used to be more than that.
It used to flex. It used to be 10 to 1 or 10 to 5. And then they decided that more stability was easier for people to remember than, oh, what season is the library in? So they just kind of split the difference.
Yeah, and I think like 20 years ago, it was open till 8 o'clock, Monday through Friday.
Oh, it was
I'm not-
open until 8 on Fridays?
I think so. Well, it doesn't.
It's
I
okay.
think it was open more hours
Okay.
than it is now. but
Okay.
Not that many.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I did a little bit of looking at like average, I want to compare us to other libraries as well.
Okay.
So when you're running state statistics, that the state library pulls together, they group us together in service population chunks. And so we're in the population 5,000 to 10,000 range, but we're right
At the 10.
we're right there.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at averages of part-time employees for library. For that 5,000 to 10,000, it's 6 part-time employees is the statewide average.
And how many full?
Wait, how many full would be, hold on, I pulled this up. For that. $5.4 would be full, so it's not that different from us. And if you jump to the 10 range, which we're right at the cusp of, the average number of full-time employees is 7.5. And the average part-time employees for that is 9.4. So and if you look at, again, like you can run the numbers and see how many operating hours you have, we report all of that to the state, and we're actually, Nick, I sent you a thing. I have charts. So I sent them, oh, you had it right ready. You're the best. And applause for our tech guys. So there is perfect. So if you look at our library visits per capita, like how many visits that we're experiencing is higher not only than this smaller libraries than us, that's statewide average. And so that's huge libraries with multiple branches, with busy urban populations where people are walking in and out, that are warming shelters, that are cooling shelters. And now we have our beautiful senior center that acts as that. But could you go? Beautiful. Our circulation is also almost double what that is, like what our, again, statewide, this little bracket.
That's total statewide average?
Yeah.
Like all sizes?
All sizes, everybody. We're
Pretty
busy.
impressive.
One more. Our print material, that's how many items that we have. Items, they're not just static on the shelves when you're in a library. So we call it weeding when we get rid of items, just like you weed a garden, you have to weed a library collection because you're like, oh, someone used a piece of salami as a bookmark in here. We have to get rid of this one. We have to weed it. Or there's not this kind of dinosaur anymore, or Pluto is no longer a planet. It has to be weeded. But so our print materials collection is that big, and we don't have an unlimited amount of space. We've been in that space since 1981 when the National Guard helped move the books in. So those items that are on those shelves are earning their space. They're going out. So one more. Our children's circulation, which is an amazing number. Again, we're almost double in, like, when you're comparing us against like size and statewide. One more. And this is our most impressive number to me. Our young adults, our teen circulating collection is again almost double. And those numbers are very small because it is the smallest collection because it's a very niche age range, but our teen books are going out. Our kids are reading. And I think that's because a lot of care and love is put into the collection. And also because the programs bring them into the library, and also because the biz students can walk to us, I think is the other piece of it. And boy, do they. So one more maybe. Yes. And so this is the other piece of it. This is a number that we're very, very proud of. The children's and young adult program attendance. We're fairly reasonable for number of programs. Like I didn't do the number of programs one instead of here, but our attendance is higher at all of those. So even if we're offering whatever number of story times, the number of people that are coming into those story times is higher than all of those averages. And the reason why I brought up the Board of Selectmen moving back in on Wednesdays is that we have to re-jostle everything to re-accommodate you into that. And we can do it, but this will help us do it. This number will, like, when you do come back, there will be a growing, we'll have to figure it out. But I don't want this number to go down because you lose families and you lose them. They find something else to do. And this is something that is funded for the community with tax money. So, and also for the children's and YA programs are the material costs and like performer fees, like whenever it's outside groups that are coming in or supplies for that. It's the friends of the library. It's your volunteer hours in this community that are paying for those. So they're an incredibly generous group. So I think that's the last one. Yeah. Okay, cool.
Okay,
Sorry. Thank you for letting me show you the charts.
that was good.
Thank you.
Just a question. So
Oh.
you,
Go ahead.
you're all set?
Yeah, I'm done questioning
Just so the,
for now.
you said something, I'm trying to wrap my
Please.
head around. You said that if that position were to not be filled.
Yes.
that the savings would only be 18,000.
Yes.
But that's not what that, my question was, what is the amount tied to just that position?
So.
Because that's not what you're, actually, that's not the cost of a person's pay and benefits, is it, in that position?
So this would be 15 hours. So there would be, I think the benefits that they get would be like sick time, because of the
So
state
just get, yeah.
piece of it. I do believe they get a little bit of vacation time at a 15-hour position. But I don't, like, they don't qualify for, the retirement.
That's all wage.
That's all wage.
That's all.
So. Yeah. And the other thing that I wanted to make sure I mentioned is, the other reason for having this librarian level staff member is because, I don't know if people recall, but where we had that shelter in place order that ended up not being, that people treated incredibly seriously in emergency services, and our town police responded really beautifully and communicated really well with us. But the librarians that were on staff that Saturday had to decide to close the door and shelter in place as directed. And it was a series of high level, like you need a person who's in that position, in that trusted space, that it knows to go over and talk to the teenagers that were dropped off earlier that morning. You need a librarian in that position who is able to be staffing in order to be safely open. So. Any other questions?
Jen, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. We love our library. Yeah, I know you guys
We
do a
love
ton
you
of
all too.
programs, so.
Thank you.
She's a good salesman. Good saleswoman.
That's the way they represent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those
You
stats
use
are
charts.
impressive.
You get
Yeah.
bonus points for that. You use
Yeah.
charts.
The charts were, put me over the top.
There you go.
Like I tell my wife's in that library 5 times a week.
Very good.
All right.
Oh, boy.
Anything else in the existing budget? I think we're almost at the finish line.
Well, seeing I've been the ogre so far. What about in the Board of Ed budget? Does anybody see anything there? It could be where there could be some savings.
Good job. So the last dozen or so budget cycles I've gone through, there's generally an ask at this point in terms of, is there anything else? Because I think all of us here have watched the meetings, we've paid attention to what you've done. Maybe most people out there haven't. They may be watching for the first time here, as we talk about combined. What do you have in your, if you had to look at your budget right now with everything that you've done, and the uncertainty and all that kind of stuff, what do you have, or what do you think would be there to either move, reduce? What's your assessment after all this?
Yeah, I wish I had brought you my charts, right? My quote of the night is, thank you for letting me show you my charts.
Yeah.
That was fabulous. That's fabulous.
You get bonus points for that.
It's empathetic. So here's my anxiety, right? And I'll just share it with you. Last year, it was rough, right? There was a point last year, Tim will remember, Laurel will remember, where Stephanie was reporting about over $1 million deficit. We were right around January. There's a reason why there's no hair left on this head, and I look as old as I do, right? I mean, it was bad. We were in a really tough spot because two things happened at the exact same time. We had some students with disabilities move in. At the same time that the state reduced the amount that they had promised us in our ECS funds. Literally in like one email from Dawn and one email from the state, we were in about $1.1 million deficit. Now, you know, what did we do? We immediately froze everything we could possibly freeze, and we notified you. right? We shared this with the board. We moved as quickly as we could. And we were discussing layoffs. We were discussing what would it mean if we had to cancel spring sports. We were playing out some draconian cuts in the middle of the year that I felt like would have really just ruined experiences and gotten people so upset, right? But we froze our budget, right? I mean, from January until July 1, we purchased nothing except what we absolutely had to. You probably heard parents talking about, why is there no paper in the schools, right? I mean, what's happening? What are they going to run out of toilet paper? I mean, we emptied out our supply costs, right? And we still ended with about a 325 deficit. And thank town of Portland for giving us that supplemental. I gotta tell you, I was very stressed out that night in June, biting my cuticles, hoping the good people in the town who came out for that town meeting were gonna vote for that supplemental. And you know, thinking, oh my God, what would happen if they voted no, right? What would I do? What would we do, right? So that's not something we want to live again. That was a very, very bad experience for all of us, and it affected the whole school district, right? Now, this year, we're not in that position, right? We are in a much better position. You heard me say to Stephanie yesterday, what is our surplus? We're in a surplus. It's not huge surplus, but there's a surplus there. We're gonna land the plane this year, and I'm not gonna be asking for a supplemental, you know, again, unless a family moves in or something happens or other things. But, you know, hey, a boiler went, right? I mean, there are things that I can't control. Like if thank you, Tom, you're a hero, right? If I was now looking for $286,000 in the Board of Ed budget to pay for a boiler, right back in the deficit. And that's how fast these things can happen. So what I brought to you truly is the minimum that we need to replicate this year's services next year. There are two things that are very much on my radar, and you know, I just want to be clear, I can't control them right now. We don't know what Hartford is going to pass for the biennial budget and how much they're going to fund the excess cost grant, right? That's the big one. That's the one that is like sort of like a catastrophic insurance policy for very expensive, high need students. And we budgeted for that. Stephanie's put that 70% placeholder in there. Tim, thank you for asking about that last night. And we know that our state legislators have heard us, and the Board of Ed wrote, I thought, a very nice letter here saying, you know, you need to live up to your obligation. These are unfunded, the definition of unfunded mandates that, you know, we're carrying out our responsibilities under the Individuals with Disabilities in Education Act to meet these, and you know, we share that burden. But just like happened last year and this year, that amount came in lower. Now we screamed and they passed a supplemental and we got a little bit more, but that could happen again next year, and that's something that is very much a concern. The other big concern I have is I don't know what's happening in Washington, D.C. I mean, the federal Department of Education is going somewhere. Someone's going to oversee how the IDEA funding and title funding is going to come to us. I'm not sure yet, but we get about $1.5 million out of the federal government, right? Is that going to be there? I don't know. Right now, if it's not, right, if the ECS formula is reduced or we don't get the title or the IDEA funding, unless they repeal the laws that require us, that create that unfunded mandate, we are not cutting our services for our most disabled and needy students. That is an obligation, a legal obligation that we have. We will go somewhere else to find those reductions, right? Or I'll be back here on bended knee with my tin cup out, asking for a supplemental or going to Hartford. So my feeling is this isn't the year that we want to make any kind of reductions with those two big unknowns out there. What's the worst case scenario for us? The worst case scenario is the best case scenario, that I get to the end of next year and I'm running a surplus, right? Because to your point, if I get to the end of this year and I'm running a surplus, hey, we have Fund 11 and we have our school lunch fund that we put it into. And thank goodness that's been there. Bob will tell you, that's what's kept, he's nodding his head, has kept us afloat, right? So yes, look it, here, I'll be honest, we're gonna get to the year, end of the year, if I have 100,000, 150,000, that's either an air handling unit or put it in a maintenance fund and sit on it in case the next boiler breaks, because that's the other thing we have to be aware of is you all know the condition of the schools. A boiler just went. It's only a matter of time. Now, this strategic planning committee is working hard. Recommendations are coming. But that's not necessarily the operating budget. So what am I saying? I'm saying I'm anxious. I don't want to be last year. I want to be this year. If you reduce me, it's coming out of people or things, right? And I don't have a lot of things in there. I've really put together the minimum budget. I am anticipating some surplus this year. So if there was some small amount cut, wanted to be a team player, I'll throw a number out there. If you were to say, cut 50,000, Charles. I have $150,000 surplus at the end of the year. Certainly I can pre-buy some things, some toilet paper, maybe bite into some of those Chromebooks or other things that we need. It would mean that it's less that we would be able to set aside for Fund 11, which is again another fund that we very much have leaned into when things are breaking, which I know you've heard from Bob, but I feel like I don't need to convince you anymore that is happening regularly, as evidenced by this new boiler situation. So if you were going to ask me to cut anything, I really wouldn't go anywhere north of $50,000 in this environment that we're in, with Hartford still working on its biennial budget and those things that are happening in Washington happening. I think because if those cuts come, we're still providing those services. It's going to be the regular general ed side of things, or we're in a freeze, or I'm back here asking for a supplemental. So it's a very complicated year.
Very helpful. Thank you. Thank you. I think the other thing that that's mixing into this whole pot is we've got, I think, three things that are factors that are above and beyond just the numbers that we're talking about. Obviously the school project and what we're going to do with the schools and how that plays out. And that involves some pretty big dollars, right? Either in capital improvements, or if a school is closed, and how do we renovate to new, reimbursement rates from the state. So that's that whole sticky wicket right now that's being worked on by a number of people, a number of smart people. So that has a cost to it and some other things that go with it. We have a reeval going on later on this year. So that's going to change the mill rates and hopefully reduce it down by a point or two based on what happened last time. So that changes the nature of the town, willingness for people to move in. That may have an effect on what we do in a positive way. Also, the increase in business that we have is also going to generate some more income, right, for the town. Brainerd Place is up and running. Hopefully we'll fill that 99 apartment unit building by end of year. Next year is another one. So those will add to the tax base. So we see a lot of things kind of, the waters are kind of raising up in terms of positive. So you've got those things that I think are worth at least talking about as we look at the numbers here as well.
But we have to remember with Brainerd Place, those tax revenues are very slow coming in.
Right.
Over 7 years.
Right.
So it's nothing that's gonna make a difference to us in the next 2, 3, 4 years.
If I'm not mistaken, I think, and I don't have, wish I brought that tonight. And I'll make sure for the next meeting I will, but it's still pretty substantial, but it will be much more in 6 years, 5 years, as we set it up before. So a couple $100,000, I believe, for next year. But again, I'll get the numbers on that, but you're right. That's gonna roll up. We don't have that same thing with the spa, and that's gonna add some stuff. So I think we have a lot of good things happening that will add to the tax base that we generally don't talk about during budget times, but because there's so much happening right now. But I see your point on that.
The reevaluation isn't a plus neither, by the way.
It doesn't add that.
It
well,
might go
doesn't add
down the
that-
bill rate, but your
No,
assessment's gonna go up, so.
Well, no.
Even in the
it's
last
still-
one, my taxes went up when it went down.
Right. It's the
So,
same dollar amount, because you still have to raise the same for what you're spending.
I'm just saying, it's not gonna be,
No, but where I.
pay less taxes,
What,
but you're making it sound like you
Change
are.
the mill
no,
rate,
no.
but
What
You change the mill rate, but your assessment goes up.
well, what I'm saying, and what I'm saying about the mill rate is it makes it more attractive for someone to come into the town, possibly.
But the dollars are the dollars.
Dollars are
Oh,
dollars.
yeah, it looks
But
pretty.
I'd rather go to a
looks
town that
fine.
has a 29% or 29 mill rate, so. Well, we're getting.
That's part of my point, but our mill rate's getting up there,
Right.
you know,
Oh, yeah.
to the, compared to some of the surrounding towns. Anyway.
No, absolutely. I mean, right now, the mill rate percentage, as you know, is 3.4% increase on the mill rate. But the percentage of spending overall, 4.6 is the number.
So from what we did last night, Tom's total was 39,795. Well, actually, let me ask you this. Tom, with the stipend for the firemen, why was it 22,400?
I think.
They based it on
50,000.
Yeah, it was 52 people originally.
But he
But
based
even
it
that,
on
if it's already
58.
that's only increasing at 200 a person.
No, the calculation that was in there accounted for 52 of the 58 they got, right? So when we got that number, it corrected and added the other 6 in, which means the full stipend had to get added in for those 6.
Okay.
And then the 200 that we increased the stipend for all of them
for
on
the
top of that.
52.
So he had 6
At the full
people
amount.
at 2,000, it's 12,000, and you had the 58 at
Another 10,000 for the other.
200.
Right.
Yeah, I kind of was.
So the stipend was in the budget is for 52 people?
Right,
Yeah,
it needed to be in there for 58 because they have 58, so it's probably good that we caught that.
So it was just
in
an
the
overall-
budget.
So that was a
So-
mistake we caught?
Yeah. So in reality, I mean, the amount that's almost double the amount that we were proposing, but that's a mistake that we caught that had to be repaired.
It's fluid though. This year, they could have 50 active members. They could
Correct.
have 65 active members.
Absolutely.
You don't know
We don't.
Right.
how many are gonna be active.
Right.
We're guessing that it's 58.
Well, I think, is it authorized 58? Is that authorized? Like, do we have an authorized number?
If we had 60 members meet the
No, we
active
don't.
criteria, do we pay 60? Yeah,
Yeah.
there's no limit to it.
That's why we have to have 58.
Yeah.
So our average used to be 64, then it changed to 62, and then, did it for over 20 years. And then we locked it around 58, which gives us a bump. So we can range, but 58's probably a safe number for the past few years.
Why was 52 in there? Was it just a mistake? Or is that how many you have right now?
Well, you have active that could have been from a previous year, but it doesn't matter. So we saved on that line item for a year that we might not have been so active for what reason or another. I mean, you could lose 6 guys, Rick, that missed 3 calls. They got to do 10%. So
Oh.
you could just miss 3 calls and be 9.999% and not get the benefit. So, it changes, but that
Oh, okay.
58 number, and speaking for the chief, it is a good number. It's a safe number not to be. If you
Yeah.
don't hit that or be under it.
So it gives us a buffer.
Then
Mhm.
All right.
Which is, offsets. Line items that go over, service contract, whatever.
If we were talking about trying to stay as close as we can to the original budget, last night we added 39,795. We take away the 16,000, the open space.
Mhm.
And the only other thing that was mentioned here that could be possible is the part-time librarian. It would bring us down to 5,795. Increase from what we were originally given.
$39,795
Yeah,
minus 16.
minus 18.
It's 34.
You're talking for the part-time librarian? That's
Yeah.
18,000. Yeah, I'm not in favor of eliminating that position, of course. Well, for all the reasons.
With your
that-
budget, I know you're not. in favor
Yeah.
of it.
Well,
Could have saved a lot
You
of
would,
time.
That's
you would save a lot of time by not putting. it
Just
there if you
saying.
didn't want it.
Sign off on it, let's go.
no, I think, well, let me ask the rest of the board.
I'm still with Rick about, we gotta get this percentage down. It's like unsustainable. Like, we've done nothing in now, what, 4 to 5 hours?
Yesterday with our special meeting, we raised car taxes $334,000.
We didn't raise it, we shifted it. Didn't raise that much, we shifted.
Yes, we
Extra revenue.
we raised $334,000. That was the difference. And it made almost no difference to our budget, to our mill rate.
We didn't take anything out of capital. We nickel and dimed the budget itself.
Mhm.
And we've asked nothing from the Board of Ed. He've offered us 50. I mean, that was like, well, thank you, but I was thinking we were gonna be higher than that. Like, I was more around 200,000. Sorry, Charles, but I want to get this mill rate under, like, under a 1, but we need to cut like another $200,000 out of something. This is not sustainable. Like, it's every year, it's something. Everyone's pulling nose hairs, crying, woe is me, but we can't make everybody happy. That's life. It sucks that, I know, Mike, you're a yes guy. We all know that. Like, you want to make everybody happy, but you can't.
No,
You gotta tell people no.
no, Mike, I'm not a yes guy.
I mean, Carl's gave you the budget. Did you counter him at all, like the past selectmen do? You accepted it and you passed it along,
we have had discussions about the numbers.
but you didn't change anything.
There were no.
You
don't
made
know.
no changes to the budget. When he handed it to you, did you make a change to it? No,
They were discussed as they were doing the budget.
you made no changes. That's what I'm asking you. The question is, did you make it, Charles goes, here's my budget, or did you just pass it along to us, or was there a change?
Once,
I think what Mike said is that he was engaged in conversations during the development of the budget with, and I see Charles shaking his head, yes, because I know that's how they do. And
Right.
so there were discussions, so that.
Yeah, but there was no changes. There were discussions.
at the end of the discussion,
Well, it
and I'm
influenced
assuming,
me to-
I'm assuming that it influenced it because the numbers I got.
You're assuming it, but did it? No. He had his budget set and you
You're right.
You accepted it, Michael.
That assumption.
You just accepted it and passed it along. That's all you did. You said, yes, okay, pass it along.
Guys, here's the reality of the situation. We're in a small town with 6,000 plus taxpayers. Nearly 90% of this budget is contractual. Our town employees, whether they work for the Board of Education or whatever, you said earlier, Rick, that people that have a job are looking to get that increase every year, and people who are retired don't. We employ people who have we just did a bunch of contracts, and they are looking for their percentage increases. If 90% of our budget, until we get more business in this town to support us, it's hard to hold the line on our taxes if 90% of what we're taxing people for includes budget increases for our employee salaries. It's just, that's reality. If you want to hold this thing at 0 or under 1% on a regular basis, then you're not going to have any employees because they're not going to be getting a raise ever. So it's, it's reality.
But that's the argument, is adding another employee when it comes to next year's budget season. That's already in there and it's non-negotiable to get rid of that employee. And we're just talking
But
about.
remember what happened with the police department. And you see this in any business that you're in. A person with tenure gets paid higher. And you always have that rotation. What happened to our police department? Our total salaries in the police department dropped and we had a number of people that retired. We have the same thing, I'm sure Charles will speak to, with our teachers. Our teachers rotate in and out. We have a lot of young teachers. The reason that he was able to save a lot of money on the benefits is because we got teachers fresh out of college that are still on their parents' insurance.
But also, as the police retire, we're paying more into the pension to cover the people that are retired. So we're not really saving money. We're just moving the money from column A to column B.
But you did help negotiate some changes to the contract, which will
Yeah.
help us in that regard.
But that won't help us until the new guys
No,
retire in 20 years.
All I'm saying is that we're here trying to cut this thing down to
Yeah.
0. And I'm basically saying that's.
Trying to cut it.
No,
Yeah,
but you're
0%.
trying to, if you got 90% of your town employees who have negotiated contracts with salary increases, and you're trying to hold the line, it becomes somewhat unreasonable. I mean, we
No, but
can,
the difference is though, if you're talking percentage increase and he's talking mill rate increase.
I agree.
Because he could have a 0 mill increase and we could still have a 3 or 3.5 increase in the budget.
Right.
So all the contracts would still be covered.
But you all, I think everybody agreed that what we had on our purchase line that we were discussing earlier, our capital improvements are all important. We can't. cut.
There's nothing to
Right.
get rid of.
I mean, I'm just trying to bring a little reality to this conversation, you know?
Well, back to what you said earlier, the change in the car tax dropped it like 0.32.
Yeah.
Of a mil, about a third of a mil. That's what we picked up. And then we added a little bit back. With small stuff.
And honestly, we didn't add much back because with the catch that we had with the 52 to 58 for the fire department, there's really not a lot that we add in dollars.
No, I'm just going off the paper that Tom gave us.
Yeah.
The total on the top was the
Right.
37.
We added 39. almost
39 and
40.
change.
Right.
So.
Right.
So to answer the question, Mike,
It doesn't matter.
Well,
Every
but-
year
but
I
no,
try the
but-
same
but
thing
it-
and I lose, so I'm just speaking, I'm putting it on the bike so people out there hear.
absolutely.
This is how I feel, like, I'm not happy with this. When it goes to the vote, I'm probably gonna say no.
Right.
So that's all I'm saying.
So you've been involved in the process. Where would you cut the money? Where would you find that money? $50,000?
No, I would take more out of them. I would probably take 100 and 100 out of the general government side, 100 out of Board of Ed, if that's got me to my 200.
But why, where's that 200 number coming from? Like, why just?
Well, I'm trying to, because I think around 200,000 gets us under a mill. Under the mill rate.
And
It'll
what,
be 0.9.
what impact do you think that would have on the education of the kids in town if he has $200,000 less to do it? What class
kind
would
of
you?
question is that? What do you mean,
Well,
what
I'm
kind of impact? That's his decision. I can't tell what he can cut.
Right.
For all I know, he can cut custodial paper towel. I don't care, like, wherever he cuts it. All right, so the kid can't wipe his butt. I don't know. He gets to decide what to do with the money. I just said he's got to do $100,000 less. Right? I can't tell him what to do with it.
So he's here, let's ask him.
Just a couple of things about the budget development process, right? So when I give Mike the budget, it's not my budget. It's the Board of Ed budget, right? And the Board of Ed spends months with workshops and discussions, and Mike is very much aware of those, as Ryan was and Susan was before. And, you know, we have lunches and discussions and you know, the last thing I want to do to Mike or any first selectman is bring a budget that he's either not aware of or going to have to cut for me, right? I mean, that's not how the process is envisioned. I make my budget, I share it with the board. Board has many workshops and discussions, and ultimately the board will have a budget in the full light of day and fully transparent. And you know, we want to work very collaboratively so that we're not surprising anybody. Now, you're right. If you cut the budget, I have to go back to you're not cutting Charles's budget, you're cutting the Board of Ed budget. It's different than the other departments, right? I would go back to the Board of Education and they will decide on their cuts. Definitely, I will make recommendations. Now, if you said 100,000, right? Okay, that my feeling is, all right, look, I'm gonna get to the end of the year and I'm gonna hope that no new families move in with special needs students and no new boilers blow up and that we end the year with a surplus, right? And if we end the year, and I don't know this number, so I'm making it up with $150,000 surplus and you cut me 100 now, maybe I can go out and buy the paper and the toilet paper and things. That just means there's less to put towards Fund 11 that Bob needs. So yes, if you said 100,000, you know, am I going to go start? Is that going to destroy me in a $25 million budget, especially when I'm anticipating a surplus this year. Look at, I'm more comfortable with 50, 75, okay? 100, I'm okay, starting to get a little anxious. If you cut me 200, now I'm anxious, right? Because there are also other things in the budget, like, I don't know how many kindergarteners we're gonna get, right? I'm budgeting 5 teachers of kindergarten. If we have a big class of 120 kindergarten students, I'm gonna need a 6th kindergarten section. The Board of Ed goes through this every year. A new student might need a paraprofessional. We're gonna man lots of things that come along. So in fairness, $100,000, that's a haircut. At this point, okay, if you were saying to me, last year cut 100,000 when I was in a $1 million deficit, you would have seen me have a lot more anxiety. This year, if you're saying I'd be more comfortable with 75 so that I can get some money over to Fund 11, I'd be better with that. 50 I could live with, 75 I could live with, 100 I think I can make some reasonable recommendations to the board. Beyond that, well, that starts to, put me in a more compromised position. And by me, I mean the Board of Education and the students who the board supports.
I just want to say I appreciate your comments a lot, and it really, that's very much mirrors the discussion that the board had when you guys were voting on which level of increase that you were going to go with, and I appreciate that consistency a lot.
Thank you. And you've seen, we've worked closely together, Tim. You've seen it on the board side, right? I mean, and Tim, I hope you will tell everybody, we don't put placeholders, we don't put ghost stock placements, we don't pad. We ask for what we need, and then Stephanie's making her reports every month, and we're watching it closely, and you lived through that with us last year, Tim. I can't do that again. Like, I can't do that again to you or to us or to everybody that was affected when we had no paper left for kids, and I was holding the line, and we had to do what we had to do. So cutting too much, it's dangerous, but it's better when we're ending the year with a surplus because of things like you're asking now and what Bob's looking at. And that's part of what's going to make the conversation we're about to have over the next few months as the Strategic Planning Committee brings forward recommendations, because you're absolutely right. The only way that you're going to reduce the budget significantly is to reduce your overhead. And the only way to reduce the overhead is to reduce the number of people you need. And right now, yes, on the board side, it's expensive to run 3 small elementary schools. That's the reality. And
Regardless of what the strategic committee comes back with, or how the town vote goes, will we budget season next year, whether I'm not here or you're not here or whoever's not here, will we be talking about 2 elementary schools?
if things had gone differently in November, I would have, I would be asking you for a very small percent increase, if any at all, to reduce to 2.
Yeah.
And then the next year, 2 years down the road, even less when we reduce it to 1. So definitely, if the Strategic Planning Committee brings us an actionable plan that we get the community to support with the bonding referendum, maybe in June, this time next year, if we are going from 3, making a move with swing space temporarily to 2, there's a significant chunk of savings there that I might be coming to, I might be having to go to the state to justify the MBO.
But this is my question. If it gets voted down at referendum, are we still gonna have 3 schools? Or would we close 1 to save money because we know we have the space?
That's an excellent question. Here's the problem with that. If you closed Valley View right now, really Valley View is the only one that you could potentially close. In terms of square footage, you could fit pre-K 2 at Gildersleeve and 3-5 at Brownstone. Here's the problem with that. Gildersleeve is not designed as an early childhood center. So our pre-K and our K classrooms would have no bathrooms, which would make it impossible long-term for our pre-K and K teachers to service the kids who are coming to them needing potty training, especially in September and October, right? Now, could we make that work for a short term and ask our pre-K and K teachers for a short term to manage that? We could, but would it be fair to say to them that for the next 25 years of your employment here, you're not going to be able to have access to facilities that your 3 and 4 year olds need to be sanitary? To me, that would be an unreasonable ask, and I promise you would result in grievances and really bad will with our teachers and their association. So do we have the space to do it? Sure. Should we do it long-term? Absolutely not. Could we do it short-term as swing space and ask our teachers to make that work? We could. And, you know, and I've been very candid with the strategic study planning committee. I also have tremendous anxiety about the well-being of our 3rd and 4th graders at Brownstone. That is a 1930s high school that are we really going to turn a 1930s high school into a 2030 elementary school without major upgrades to things like safety? We could do it short term, and I swear we'll build a fence around it to keep those kids off that road. But long term, it's not the right move. So in an emergency or for a short term, we can make it work. But as a plan for the next 25 years, without really thoughtful process to go through, I think it would be a huge mistake. And you know, could result in grievances or God forbid somebody get hurt.
Any other questions?
I would just say, for me, you can't go fast enough to bring us a proposal on these schools because I was talking about this back in 2017 and 18 when I was on the board of selectmen.
Yeah,
I think we need about 3 weeks. Give me 3 weeks. and I'll be back.
We need that consolidation.
It's coming.
3 schools is unsustainable long-term at the
Unsustainable now.
unsustainable. Yeah.
No,
absolutely.
it's, yeah, and it's better. It's,
And we haven't been able to, and it's that built-in extra cost of whatever $1 million a year, which directly affects the numbers here.
well, I hear we have the opportunity for maybe between $50,000 and $75,000 in a cut we could make now that wouldn't create a crisis on the part of the Board of Ed. So is that something people have interest in considering?
I would consider that, and I would say to Mike Hernandez that to get down to 1 mil, we would have to cut about 148 to 150,000 overall to get my math is right. So that's too much to ask, I think, the Board of Ed, or based on what Charles has said. We'd have to take some from the government side if we got. And ideally, that's where I'd like to see us be, is around a mill, but I'm not sure all of us have the stomach, or it's, you know, it's.
On our side, we took the 16 from open space.
Right.
That's all we've taken so
Yeah.
far.
Yeah. I guess if it came to a vote, I liked our librarians' comments, but if we had to cut something else, I guess I would go with that position.
So right now with the 16 for open space, and let's say we do 75 from Board of Ed, that puts us $91,000 down combined.
We could call that a start, right?
Let's go around the bend. And just get everyone's temperature on this, Jim.
It's interesting in that I think that probably the biggest, listening to, you know, Dr. Britton, the biggest really risk is to cutting the 75 would be downstream probably, obviously barring no emergencies would be the reduction of Fund 11 opportunities. Which part of what we're trying to do here is figure out how to fund monies to help do work in the schools, right? And that's Fund 11 kind of helps with that, so. But I also, if it helps us this year, those are other things we can figure out another way to fund when we need to. If we need to.
I echo that.
That's a good point, Jim. I mean, every time that
No.
there's been a crisis for funding that comes before the board, I don't think we ever said no.
Yeah, we stepped up.
Because usually we're in a position where
Yeah.
the sort of the adverse effects of saying no are worse than,
Yeah.
But we also are usually in a position where we've seen some additional clarity on either other revenues or other savings that we've been able to realize. Right? I think that's one of the things that Tom was talking about earlier is that we've been able to use some of those monies when we know we've been generating some of those surpluses to then attack some of those. But we don't know those when we're at this stage. So if we need to, we'll have to do the same thing again. Hopefully we won't need to. Hopefully boilers will last until we can, and things like that. And hopefully 3 weeks, we've got a good plan.
Bob, yeah. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So are we talking about 50, 75, or 100 for BOE?
I'm suggesting 75
75.
plus R16, but I wouldn't want to go any farther than that.
Open not the library position.
75 and BOE, 16 of those for the open space one.
Okay, when you said you didn't want to go any farther, you just.
You won? No, the 75.
Oh, it's 75
Yeah,
on the B&B.
we can find more, but yeah, that's as far as
I was, for the same reason Jim just mentioned, trying to fund these guys. I was really thinking about the 50 grand supportive education. But I think, to be fair, I think we should try to find a little more on the downside too.
57.95.
I'm okay with
5,700.
75. 16 you mentioned.
Okay.
And because he doesn't want to eliminate that, maybe look for a little more, but.
nothing in the water, right?
So, no.
Right back on.
Oh, please.
So,
You have any money?
So, I talked about the sidewalks earlier. The funding that's in the capital budget for the sidewalks for next year, that's a grant that hasn't gone in yet. So we could just not apply for that grant and significantly reduce that, say 50,000 to leave some money in there for contingency on the other two projects. It's an idea.
and that still lets us do, that's kind of where I was.
Because it's
before,
not
that lets us
guaranteed
do
we get
2
the
of 3.
funding anyway.
Well, what sidewalk, go ahead. I was gonna ask, what sidewalk was that money gonna be earmarked?
High
What
Street,
section?
right?
That was gonna be the
High-
other High Street.
That was gonna be High Street to continue from Crimson Heights and then going up to the high school area, which would match up with, the road work that we've been doing. Everything like that, it really completes and puts a nice bow on High Street.
How much money are we putting in versus what the grant is?
So the grant, assume it's gonna be like $500,000. It's somewhere between 3 and 8, but it's whatever we estimate. We say we want 489,000, if that's the estimate, then we potentially get that grant for that amount. So yeah, we would be losing that, but it would save on today's budget. We could potentially still apply. And then if we get the project, come back to the board to get funding to do the engineering.
So Ryan, how much
I
were
would
you
need to
saying?
give up $75,000 to give up a $600,000 grant.
Right.
Yeah.
It seems
Right.
quite
That-
foolish to risk that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
unless Tom thinks there would be a different way to pay for it if we won the award.
Yeah, but I don't, it's not a great idea, to cut the 75, it's an idea. I don't know, I can't tell you that we have the money there, I don't know if we would, I mean, we'd obviously have to. There is, I think, a language that you say that you're gonna have the information be kind of design ready.
Mhm.
So we kind of would need to have that. I mean, I guess that. I guess you could do it a little bit different way, maybe you take off. Maybe you take 25 off and hope you can get the design done at 50. That's something you think you can do, Ron?
We could, yeah, we could do that and at least get the design moving if we needed to come back and say, hey, we need another 20,000 to get this design done.
Because I would hate to wipe out any.
Any
infrastructure
possible,
projects.
Yeah.
Cause it's overall a positive for Portland.
Yes,
Yeah.
Getting this. grant.
especially near 3 of our schools.
Yeah,
But that would be foolish.
So,
yeah, we could try cutting 25 off that and. You know, we'll still apply for the grant, go through the process, probably be able to get the design going. Through, you know, the middle of next year.
Mhm.
You know, being like December, January, I'm talking next budget season. And then next budget season possibly say, hey, we need a supplemental or we need
Gets us to 160.
something else. to-
I'd feel a lot
bring it
better
home.
doing that than taking the whole amount away.
Yeah,
I think that's foolish to.
Yeah.
Do that for a $600,000 grant.
yeah,
I agree.
It's a
I agree.
definition of penny wise and pound foolish.
Yeah.
yeah,
Absolutely.
so we'd leave it in there at 50 instead of 75.
yeah,
But we apply just as we would, and then if we do get it, that's a great problem to have.
yeah. I think that'll work.
I think that makes sense. I think we're all in favor of that.
Yep.
The other
We-
one up here too was this, I mean, this is a tough one. I mean, we've been trying to fund security cameras and fire alarm systems with security cameras throughout. The various town halls and our town hall stuff has been a little dated. There's places where we're missing coverage. But I mean, if that's something you guys wanna push down the road or more, that's the 20,000 on the bottom there of the list. Just, you know, that would get pushed down, so. That would get you, you know, would be the 25 from that.
Is it more for cameras or is it fire alarm?
Yeah, that was gonna be my
This area
question.
is the cameras.
Okay.
It's mostly cameras.
This part, the part where it says townwide security
Yeah.
cameras, that's, for this allotment was intended for cameras, obviously it could be
Okay.
any of those things that are there, but.
Gets us down.
Well, I
to
wouldn't
130.
want to take out a fire alarm.
No, that's.
Yeah, that's my
exactly.
question.
It's a separate line.
Well, I know when we talked, you said it was like a catch-all title.
Okay.
Line item, yeah.
And what we have in place now is functioning, it's just getting dated.
You know, there's one piece that's not functioning, but we'll try to come up with a different source of funding for that. As it relates to election supplies, so maybe we'll have to find out our current operations. Because there's a requirement that would be over
The ballot box.
So we'll do our best to try to accommodate that out of the current operations. And then the other stuff that we were gonna attempt to do. I guess we'll just not, will be done this cycle. That gets you the 50,000 that you guys were 45,000 that you looked at.
So. If we do $50,000 Board of Ed. 16,000 for open space, 25,000
For
for
sidewalks.
the sidewalks,
and 20 for
20,000 for
security
the cameras. We're
cameras.
either,
Yeah.
we're at 111,
That's
at
that-
50,000, we're at 136. at
136,
75.
right?
136 if we do 75.
And that, yeah, and that's 61 out of the, that's 61 out of the town side.
Mhm.
Interesting.
All right. Everybody sharpen their pencils. First I wanted to just say thank you to the board for all your hard work. The proposal to add the $200 to each of the active members goes farther than you can understand. You know, the job that we do and what we get for it sometimes doesn't seem to equate, but we do it because they like it and we're here for the town. What I can propose to you, I'm trying to sharpen my pencil here just so we can not cut things like police cars and things that are of, you know, necessity. In capital, I have, let's see, we're on page 138 for fire capital. I have first tool replacement for $25,000. What this is 4 is for when engine 2 arrives, we need a combi tool, that will go on that truck. When I originally did the capital budget, I kind of wasn't aware that there was a fund balance left over of around 6,000. So what I'm willing to do is give you 5,000 off of that 25. Going down to the AED replacement, I have $5,000 that I have allocated for AEDs. What that gets me is 2 AEDs. They're around $2,200 to $2,500 a piece. I'll push one out till next year, and there's another 2,500 that I'd like to give. So I can cut 75 out of capital for fire. Just to help the process.
Thank you.
Everyone's got to sharpen the pencils, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob.
Rob.
We really appreciate it.
Thank you. That would put us at 143.5.
Huh?
That's 143.5.
Yeah, we're within about $5,000 of a getting to a mill, the 1 mil increase.
It was,
The Hearst tool replacement is 20,000 instead of 25.
Mhm.
AED is 2,500 instead of 5,000.
Yep. Got 118.5 at 50,000 for Board of Ed and 143.5 at 75.
what, how much for the board then?
At 75 for Board of Ed, it's
Okay.
143.
Yep,
0.5
143.5.
At 50,000, 118.5.
So the deductions total, 118.5?
Yeah, 118.5 at 50,000 for Board of Ed, and at 75 for Board of Ed, it's 143.5. For all the deductions we've talked about so far.
We're about. We're just, we're,
43?
if we,
143.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
if we did 143.5. We would be a little bit over a mil increase.
Is that what you have?
Yeah,
To
'cause
the
I figured out we needed 148,000 to get it down to of deductions, 148 and change to get down to 1 mil.
Yeah, just over.
Just
over,
over
yeah.
4,500.
We're almost there.
Everybody's feeling the library position.
I support keeping it at 500. Okay, I do, just because of what I see the needs down there, and I think there's other places I'd rather cut. Okay.
Which one?
That's what we're doing now. Well, we just found 111 or 118.
Let me look at my notes. What else did I?
Hey, Jen, how bad is that copier?
It's
Bad?
yeah.
Okay. I thought it was, but I just had to ask the question.
You're gonna get it back. So pay it.
Yeah.
Yes, or don't you just take it
Mike.
back?
Mike Hernandez has a question with the police overtime, because it's paid back to the town. What if we just took it out of that? Because we're not deducting it from the police.
Do that one, because we took quite a while now that we actually got it up. We brought the revenue up, we
Mhm.
brought the expense up, so that if we don't have to keep going back, we had supplemental appropriation. That's what happened in the past, is we don't have to really need that. So it's actually the first time we were able to get that back. So now it's, you got a big revenue number, you have to have expense.
Yeah.
Well, you go on the revenue side and add 5,000 into the somewhere permitting. Michael, Philostrina? Good question. When looking at your budget and looking at it closely, is there anything that you think that you had in your budget that you'd be willing to either part with or that wouldn't have a big impact on this year for you?
The only thing is the 10,000 maybe for the mulcher head.
Was that in your capital?
This in the capital.
That's the second.
At the excavator,
Second part of it.
That would purchase it.
Mike, was that called excavator attachments? That is,
Yes.
The majority of that was funded last year in capital.
And just needed more, right?
This is the overage because it wasn't purchased last year.
Oh,
You know, the extra $2,000 for the trees.
Oh, okay, right. Yeah, that was something we put in last week.
I
We
think
could
that's
probably
more,
live with that.
I think that's more important to take the 2,000 way up to tree service. Take that back.
yeah, the 2,000 back.
Yep.
on that? Okay.
Yeah, because you gotta pay for that head, right? You already paid for part of it?
Yes.
We
Well,
funded part of
We
it.
funded part of it.
We haven't
The
even,
rest of the funding.
yeah, this is the purchase that to
Okay.
put us over the top.
It's not like if they're holding it.
No,
Right, but if we don't
But if
give
we
you
don't
that
spend it, it's
extra,
gonna
then
be
you're
more.
not gonna buy it this year, right?
Right.
no.
You could function without it for now?
How much was that number on the head? I can't find it.
10 grand.
10,000.
Oh, it's 10.
it's called excavator attachments. It's in, 135.
Page 135?
Yeah.
So,
I thought we were leaving that in.
well, we are leaving it in, but I'm just asking questions about it because
Oh.
I wasn't,
We funded
Yeah.
20,000 for it last year.
Yeah.
It wasn't enough. So they
Okay.
put 10,000 more in this year to
okay.
complete the purchase.
And obviously it's something they must need if you
It's
approved it.
roadside clearing. It would be used every year, all the time. From spring till fall.
Is it a cutting head?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like a brush cutter?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I think we should leave that.
Stays in. 2,000 for trees comes out.
Yep.
We're at 120.5 and 145.5.
The only thing we had was the cover. That was the only
We-
addition.
Or we made.
And we saved some bag money there too.
That's-
So
Yeah,
Yeah, we offset it.
that's all in the.
Yeah.
You got.
Mhm.
And
At this point, that
Thanks,
gets us to about what?
Or 145, oh, or shade over a mill.
Yeah. I mean,
That's the goal.
Like when it's high because the slab's already paid. That's when.
Well, I know it's a big.
That's why we were so. high this year.
Got that gas thing, exactly.
how much do you need?
Oh, we're talking about after July anyway.
Yeah.
It's 760, what's that?
It'll mostly be branded goods. What's that? It'll mostly be branded. Think of much of it, permanent.
How much do we need? So what are we looking for? Is that 766? Or is it 2?
I would think. We need to work together, that's like.
I would.
I have a library
I would go back.
question.
Library questions? You get
Yeah.
Jen back up there?
Jen?
Hey, Jen, they have a library question.
He can't get the CO on. So.
You maybe have a chart. On the repairs line, I see in past years, it was like it was 650, and then it was 364, and then this current budget year, it was 2,000, and you're carrying that forward. What is the repair? If it's the copier,
It's,
we could save some money there.
so that's any repairs
Just any.
for items. And so it does fluctuate a bit. We don't use it if we don't, but when we do need it, we need it in that line. And so I think that it's usually funded at $2,000. That funding request level has been pretty stable. It's just that's how much we used for the other 2 years, not how much.
Yeah, because it was underutilized the other 2 years.
Yes.
And this is a tough question, you may not know the answer.
Yeah, we
Where-
won't know it. We won't
where
know
are you
unless-
now for that?
That's what just.
I don't- That's a good question. I can't pull that from, I would be able to pull that in the library, but I can't because it's in the,
We're just sweeping the couch cushions now. I'm
I
looking
can see
to
that.
say, well,
Uh,
1,500 there would be adequate.
you could probably go down to 1,500 for that. The only other place you could squeeze me for would possibly be service contracts, but that makes me really nervous if you don't want to be hot in my Mary Flood room when we have false summer in the fall, like.
Oh,
We never
The-
questioned Tom on his service contract.
Oh, okay, yeah, well, that's the only other item that's kind of escalated.
Yeah.
A lot, but.
If you want to take the heating fuel down to 14,500 budget.
We just might need to come to you if it's another cold winter.
Or a sweater.
It's a page on.
99.
Page 99, I'm sorry, Tom, which line is that?
It's
I run hot.
Heating fuel.
Oh, okay, yep.
So we're taking off how much?
Do you think, and Tom, leave that at 14,5?
that's $725.
And then,
Could we do that? 1,500 on equipment rental repair?
I think you
If
were
you-
saying,
Yeah, we could try. I just would need to come to you if I have something
Yeah.
fail.
That would give us $500 more.
Yep.
This is,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, but she didn't know how much she spent this year, and the previous 2 years were 600 and 300.
But the odds of that same light going out is less now.
that's true.
The other lights I cannot speak to.
So we're starting to get deep into the
I don't-
smaller numbers.
Unless somebody else has something. with them.
Well, I know we talked about this. I'll just say, I come back to the letter from Sarah Elliott. That she says, I'm requesting we increase our transportation budget from 32,000 to 34,000, but ideally 36,000, a 12.5% increase that will have a profound impact. I mean, that's from the department head. To me, I'm fine with that, the number she's asking for.
Don't disagree.
I'd be okay with that.
I mean, not
I mean,
every senior citizen needs a ride service. We're providing for the ones that do.
would that throw us over the top where we're trying to get?
I think
Yes.
it would, if it's 2,000, is that right?
Yeah.
For that, it would get us to 148,750.
What would it be?
I had, from my math, it would be
148,750.
148,750. So we could maybe decrease it by less than the full 2,000, with 148, is that right?
Well, I gotta redo the math.
Yeah.
I think it was 148 and change.
Let's have.
Thank you all.
I had 1 mil with a need $148,334 reduction.
Hey, Tom? Would you be willing to plug in this number and let us know what the adjusted mill rate would be?
I'll tell you, here, figure a number you're at. You go a prior year status rate, that would get you to 198, 298. Prior year interest, that would get you to 157. That what we're on at that point.
101. Okay. I mean, we're starting to get into the 750, 500.
Your expenses is 41772 right?
Say that again? Wait.
Your expenses I have 41772
Meaning expense reduction?
No, it's total expense.
Oh, expenditures?
Not following you, Tom.
Yeah.
Sure.
What did we just take off at the
So,
about
2000.
For what?
Library, no,
Library.
library was,
Library
750.
was. Yeah, 500.
on the fuel was
and
725.
Yeah, but 500 and 750. 500 for the the repairs, and 750 for the fuel.
I think the fuel was 725 actually.
Oh. You're probably right on that. I think I just did it.
And you lowered the equipment and repair and rental
The repair came down
to
to
1,500?
1,500. Yeah.
Yeah, and the fuel was 725.
We're gonna go down to 1,500.
I didn't think we did that.
Oh, I thought,
We proposed it. I don't know if we decided on
yeah, I don't know what page that's on now.
It's on 99. I think Tom said that should stay.
it. Tom gave us the 725 on the fuel.
Right. That's where we're at right now.
Right.
Oh, right.
And then
right,
I
right.
suggested cutting the van back to 36,000.
Another 2. So I have a total of 148,750.
We do.
Or 123,250. Someone else want to check their numbers as well?
This is from
The 2000, yeah, yeah. Double check what you have. So I think we're pretty, yeah, I think we're pretty close. I mean, we're looking for pennies right now on this thing. Tom, do you have all the numbers? That could be the best answer
That would be a
today.
no.
I have 148,225.
148,225?
That's, yeah, I could be off a little. I don't know. We did so many
Right.
iterations, but
So figure 148 or 123.
yeah.
Right.
I don't know. I think I'm gonna rest my case.
Right.
But
I think we took a good whack at it.
I think we did. I think we did.
Yeah.
You know, and people stepped up and we
Mhm.
appreciate
Yeah,
it.
I can't,
Yeah.
everybody came in and gave a little.
They
So-
saw us floundering. And
So,
Give us a
okay,
rope.
so let's get to the big decision left over. So we have considered 50,000 or 75,000 from Board of Ed. The 148 number, either 250 or 750, we'll confirm the numbers, is with the 75, so
the
123.
75, right?
Yeah, 75 of that, and if it's 50,000 from Board of Ed side, it's 123. What's the
Or
consensus?
120. Yeah. I
I'm
got
just
120.
approximating until we double check
Okay, I
all
got
the
like
numbers.
one, yeah, one, okay.
What'd you have?
I got 122 and change.
Yeah, like 123, 250. But we'll double.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Are you throwing donations?
Yeah, I mean.
Oh.
Nathan Stryker, Brown's Department. Yeah, I mean, we run a lean budget, but I think
going back through the years, I think we could reduce our ground supplies. I know that's something we've always tried to build up. I think last year we had about $4,000 left over. I mean, prices are stabilized. We do like $2,500.
What page are you on? Do you?
You know what? I don't have,
Okay,
oh, wait a minute, hold on. Yeah,
thank you.
I think I
Thank
do.
you. Okay, you're talking about ground supplies.
Yes,
Your budget is 49,000.
49,
What are you suggesting?
dropping it $2,500.
How much did you say?
46.
Yeah, go to 46.5.
Taking 2,500 off.
That helps.
Yeah, so I
That
appreciate it.
helps.
Any,
Cool.
anything else you want to add?
Yeah.
While we're here.
I will. Thank you guys very much. I don't envy you.
No.
It's actually very helpful when you
Yeah.
guys
Yeah.
are able to look
really.
at it and find a better way for us to target.
Right.
So thank you for
Yeah.
that.
Right.
Appreciate it.
And bring it to Tom also. Confirm, oh, he's doing it already? Okay, great. Whatever you do, keep Tom informed. Whatever you do.
Okay.
Well, Mike, do you want to go over the list of what you have for numbers right now? So we can all,
Well,
because I think all sitting at various places on the table, it may be hard to hear.
We all have different things.
Exactly.
So let's go through, let's confirm that we have all the numbers here.
Okay.
Right. All right, so 2 columns, 50 and 75 for Board of Ed, 6. Wait a minute. What was it? Sure. What page? Wait a minute. Okay. Which number, Tom? Oh, 1. Property taxes prior years? It's 295 now. What are you suggesting?
298.
Another 3,000?
That's one down. 155, 169, 500.
What was that, 150?
So it's property tax, interest and liens. 0012 on page 5.
And what's the number?
169.5.
Oh,
It's,
169,500.
okay.
Next one down. Supplement. Change the made number up. So it is 330 to 340.
Okay. Yeah,
Yes, please.
let's go over it. Mark.
I gotta get a clean sheet of paper.
Okay. 100%, go right, anything you want to.
Thanks. I scribbled over scribble.
Fire. I have the number of 1103 or 157, 395.
Okay, wait a second, Tom. What, do you know the page you're on?
40.
So-
Additional number is 138,500. We have it at 157,295.
Okay.
1729.
Fire.
Can you repeat that, please?
157,295.
Page 45.
Yeah. 157. Which line was that? Which
It
line?
was line 11003.
Right.
Budget was I have I have tree removal of 22,000.
Page,
please.
I was 59.
Thank you.
I was looking at 21.
21, it should be no increase.
That was 21.
Oh, yeah. 5104.
page,
7.
that's 61003. So that's going down.
No. Yeah,
Oh,
four.
four.
Right, grounds.
46508.
Oh, got it, yep. Down 2,500.
Right.
Municipal 97. 32,000 to 33,000. 1441.
I'm sorry. Yeah, what's your new number there, Tom?
38,000.
Yeah, we talked about lowering at the 36.
What page are we on?
97. This is for the driver stipends.
Oh, right.
Well, let's see, why don't we see where we get? 'Cause
Yeah,
I think there's some
okay.
strong feelings on both sides of
All
it.
right, so we're leaving it at 38 right now.
Yep.
Okay.
Next page, 99. Got a change in 62004 into. Change it was 14,500.
$750 difference.
Wait, how much is that? 750?
750.
725.
Three, 107. 90005, Canberra resource recovery. I have 227,496.
Yeah, that's the same.
Up to the capital 5,009.
Here's a transfer of open space.
The transfer 900 transfer open space is back to 50,000. 90012 transfer out capital non-recurring. I have it at 760,500. Before that at 107.
I missed that one. What was the last?
Page 107.
Yeah.
90012.
12.
That goes down to 760,500 instead of 813.
760,500.
The one above that is 50,000.
Yep, I got that. Okay.
Several fund changes. Then you get 50,000 for the board of ed.
That was
50,000 for the board of ed.
We doing 50?
We didn't, I don't
75?
think
think that's what we have to
I don't think we
decide,
have to
yeah.
decide that.
Can we do all the
50 or
others, Tom,
75?
and then work back to that?
Yeah.
It has 50,000.
Okay.
That gets you to, it's 15,000, 845210 is the general government. 2592406 is board of ed, and 4176 296. If you to motivate 35 maybe the future and go back into other funds now.
Tom, before you do that, could you repeat the Board of Ed budget and the total budget number again? 210, got it.
Board of Ed is 25924,086. The combined number of 41,769,296.
Thank you. The mill's up 35.30. That's the mill.
Or that 21, 26, line 35, and oh. And actually it's 34, 30, 2.9.
Tom, can you, what's the overall spending increase? Thank you, sir.
And we appreciate it.
General government is at 351. What about that? I didn't do that. We have to use the focus. I'll get back to the focus.
Hold on. 127, shoot.
501, 227, 496.
Got it.
Should equal the same number on the transfer page.
Mhm.
5903 on 128. $1,000.
Yep.
5903.
Bags and stickers on the bottom.
Page 139. 945. Have one of them occurring. One, 3, 6. Yeah. General fund, 917, 500, 917, 500.
Which one is that again, Tom?
501 transfer.
Yep. Yep. And what's that number?
917,500.
917500. Got it. Instead of 970. Got it.
502, transfer in RES, REC, which will cover 4,000.
Yep.
Yep.
And your bottom number is 1648016. Go over the next page. There will be 137. There's a change on 138. For using first tool for $20,000. We need replacement for 2,500.
Yep. I got it.
And we're replacing. The next change I have is sidewalk reconstruction non-grant, which is on page 140. $50,000.
The highway division, yep, got it. 50.
Page 140, replace covers parts containers of 4,000.
Mhm.
Page 141, 89120. Whatever security cameras are gone.
20,000, gone.
Okay. And then if you look at the very bottom of that page, comes out to 161648016, which equals the number of the.
Repeat that number again, 16
16480.
instead of 1700516.
Whoa, look at that difference.
What's that number?
That's the right number. Well, that's what he just gave
Yeah,
us.
and that was the one that found.
Oh, maybe
Yeah,
it's-
so this is something, okay. Yep. So this was changes in that. Got it. All right. And that's all of them, Tom? Okay. All right.
So that ends up at what, one, Tom, what, right, 1 mil? Is that what it was?
Yep. The final mill rate is 35.30. Town is 13.44 and Board of Ed was the difference. Let me do the math real quick.
That was at 50,000 on Board of Ed.
Yeah.
That's at 50,000, yes. All right. And yeah, so government side is 13.44. Board of Ed is 21.86. Total mills is 35.30. The increase or the mill rate increase is 1.0.
Right, which is 2.93%.
Right. And 2.93%, yes. And the mill rate would be 1.0.
Which was our
Target.
Target, right. Yep, that's what we're shooting for. With the assistance of many of those.
everybody.
Everybody.
Yes, everybody,
Everybody.
everybody. All right. I feel like we've gone about as far as we can. Is there anything else?
Going once, twice, 3 times.
Now listen, I have to say also, this process is something that we do every year and we put heart and soul into it. And there's a lot of feelings and passion about it. We're trying to save dollars, but we're also trying to save either programs we like or things that we think will make the town better. I'll continue to do that. I think all of you have done the same thing. So I'm proud of how we did this. I feel comfortable with this budget right now. And if there's any other discussion, let's go around one more time and just make sure everyone feels comfortable. If anything, anything else to say. We'll start on the other
I
side
think
first.
it's like anything, when you have a compromise,
Mhm.
you know, doesn't make everybody happy, but you do what you need to do.
Michael,
Yeah, I said if we get it to a mill, I'd be content with that. So I'm
are you
good,
feeling a level of content?
content.
I'm good.
Content, good,
I'm good.
good, good.
I appreciate everybody's cooperation.
Thank you to everybody. I'm good.
Yeah, same thing. Tough process. And I think if we're not arguing about some stuff, so probably not doing our jobs up here.
Right,
But thanks to everybody for looking at your budgets and seeing where you could help as well.
yes,
Very, it makes the job a lot easier when you guys can target and help us find some savings in a place that's gonna be less impactful to you versus us making, less educated guesses at it.
absolutely. And I think it's important for people to be aware of the process we go through. I mean, we don't just put these numbers out, we work real hard to get the best we can and balance out with the services that we have out there too. So, all right, I feel good about this. So next steps. Our next meeting will be next Wednesday, April 2nd, where we will do a final adoption of the budget. Tom will plug all the numbers in. Each one of you will get a copy of the updated budget. I believe we've really covered all the questions. We will meet, maybe have some final discussions and thoughts about going forward. And at that point, once we adopt the budget, Monday, May 5th, the first Monday of May, there'll be hearing at the Portland Middle School cafeteria for those that want to come and express their thoughts and opinions on the budget. The referendum itself will be May 12th and we'll be at the high school, middle school. Very good. All right. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Members, thank you very much.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.